Let's go. Shout out the fucking pickles. All right, let's search for Lindell's thing. Rick Beato. Brother, it's an hour and 17. Hour 17. Let's go. All right.
Let's go.
Yo, Lindell, I do not know how we're supposed to like feasibly are we supposed to like watch it in full and then discuss? Are we supposed to pause in the middle and then discuss? I don't really know. We've not done this. Anything we've done like this before, I'd watched ahead of time. But Lindell's like, nah, we do it live reaction. But yo, screw it. We can do it however we want, I suppose.
I mean, are we planning on putting this on YouTube? Because I don't know.
Yes,
if we can use...
but I'm absolutely gonna cut out all the copywritten material.
Okay, because I think that's what I was trying to explain yesterday. Was like if we watch it and then we comment throughout it, and we're not like spending so much time as like playing the video, then I think it's fair use because we're like creating content with the content.
You ready, Christopher? Hold on, we should do like a formal intro. All of that before that was like the informal intro. YouTube, what's up? We're live at twitch.tv/BehindThatSoup, people of the future. My name's Holden Stephan Roy, and joining me today is...
What up, everybody? It's Chris Chrome.
And this is the version of the classic quest we've never done before, where via Patreon powers, Lindell Williams has requested we watch this interview at an hour and 20 minutes. So we're going to do that and I guess react to an interview. So technically, if that's something y'all want, patreon.com/BehindThatSoup is all I'm saying. And you can make that happen for yourself in the future. Also, if you're an artist and you want to have an album review where people can quote, get some quotables for your EPK, we do that. So you go hit up that Patreon before the prices go up is what I'm trying to say.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Nah, like within a month. I'm telling you, it's going to get a lot more expensive within a month. But technically, if people get in now, that price is cheaper. On that note, I don't know how to preface this because it's not an album that we've listened to and prepped for. This is Rick Beato, who I found out we're doing this during this very stream that we're all on. And he's interviewing an author named Ted Gioia. We'll find out how it's really said soon. And let us know if you enjoy this format, if you guys mess with this kind of thing. And we'll do more of these interview reactions. So on that note, are you ready, Christopher Chrome?
We'll preface and say that I don't know who this interviewer person is, and I don't know who the interviewee is either. So just like an album review, I am going into this absolutely blind. And
just while we're absolutely here, this part's definitely getting kept in. Look at this guy's thumbnail. He just jacked the freaking thumbnail, did a bad background removal, and then screenshotted himself in. Like, that's a screenshot. Anyway, just wanted to give all love to our Vasu. If you do it, let's subscribe to him. Let's give him some love. Let's do it right here in front of y'all. We're going to run it and then not watch his video after. Done. Let's watch this.
Silicon Valley.
Right.
I was right in the heart of it. I dealt with all these people. I mean, I people I went to
Yo,
business
let me know
with
if the volumes is
I know how those people think. They're just eating Hollywood's lunch because they're shrewd and they're smart and they're controlling the technology decisions.
I decided to reach out to a person that I did not know, but I'm a huge fan of his writing, and that's author Ted Gioia. You may remember me referencing one of his articles called "Is Old Music Killing New Music?" Here's a little background on Ted. Ted Gioia was born into a Sicilian-Mexican household in Hawthorne, California, a working-class area in south central Los Angeles. He went on to receive a degree in philosophy, politics, and economics at Oxford University in England, and then returned to Stanford to complete an MBA.
This dude gets girls. I'm going to just throw that out there. That's the start of our interrupting this to comment on a thing that Chris wants.
Ted,
thank you for having me here.
I've been reading a lot of
latest
articles. I subscribe to your Substack, and all of you should subscribe to Ted's Substack. Actually, can you talk about Substack, what it is? So
I was
people
about to
know?
be like, what in the fuck is
an
Substack?
alternative publishing platform. And it's interesting because in many ways, this is what I would like to see from musicians. I wish, and I tell the people at Substack, you should do something for musicians, because the way it works is I have complete control over my platform. So anything I put up on that, I have complete copyright on and own all the intellectual property.
Okay.
I can charge for subscriptions, or I can give them away for free. It's up to me. If I charge, I get to keep 90%.
Wow.
Of the
Because I
revenue.
don't know what Substack is. It never popped up into my life
for creators
until this moment.
And literally everything is in my control.
High
I get to
breakfast
decide when to
cereals.
publish, what to publish. I get to decide if I want to have an article behind a paywall or not. And I've told the folks at Substack, you should really do this for musicians as well, because they are not getting 90% on the dollar, let me tell you. And this whole idea of being able to reach directly your audience is wonderful. If I leave Substack, I can bring my email list with me. I mean, everything in terms of the decisions
This dude's not competing with Spotify.
they've made have been...
What? Wait, hold on. Where did you get that from?
Bro, this is
What?
like saying go to Bandcamp and get people to like fucking run your music through Bandcamp. That's what I took from it. Man, I don't want to be like too like premature with it. I'll let everybody say their piece and shit, but I'm just like, hold on. You're saying get people to go to another independent website that's not Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube and get the regular person to do all this extra account sign up to get my songs, where then they're going to have to download MP3s that are outside of their music listening ecosystem. That's a wildly big ask for most independent artists.
Yeah.
When you do an article for the New York Times, for example.
Sorry, I didn't ask your opinion, Chris.
No, I agree, actually. Like, when you break it down like that, I'm like, if I have to go... You lost me at the MP3 is where I was like...
I'm like,
why
yo,
am I
how do you get this
downloading it?
music, right? Like, wait, you're going to go on the Substack and stream the music there, bro? I hate when I have to be on SoundCloud or fucking... Dat Piff, bro. Sometimes I got to hear shit on Dat Piff. And I'm like, man, this is awkward. It's functional, but not enjoyable.
I mean, there's a... I have a certain respect for, like, still keeping certain shit old school. And, like, if it's a mixtape, you want to go to Dat Piff and listen to the mixtape and
No,
shit.
I want to go
But,
to
like-
YouTube and find the mixtape and hit play on the video. That's what I want to do. Shit, in my perfect world, I'd go to Spotify and that shit would just be there, but we know that's not going to happen.
You know, the convenience rules the world. Jesus Christ.
The one I referenced, how old music is killing new music. The New York Times, did they publish every part of it, or do they decide, oh, well, we have editorial control over how long it is, for example? How does that work?
So in this instance, Substack allows me to license out articles.
Okay.
So people approach me at times and they say, Ted, we like this article. Can we license it from you? So
Yeah.
once again, this is completely my decision whether I want to do it or not. In some instances, they want to make edits. In the case of that article, they wanted to make a number of edits to more or less to fit with their house style.
Yeah.
And I allowed every one of their edits, although later there was one I should have not allowed because they turned a very clear statement into something that was misleading. I'm not going to go down that path. But in fact, this is the difference between Substack and working for a periodical.
Right.
With Substack, I'm allowed to have a more conversational voice. I mean, it's not much different from what you do. You are able to create almost a one-to-one relationship with your audience. And that's one of the things I tried to do at Substack. But as soon as you start working for one of these large periodicals, they want it a little less informal, more structured. And so that's the world we live in now, is the media is moving to this more personalized approach, but in many ways the mainstream media hasn't caught up with that.
So Ted,
Yo, he just spit the biggest fact stills, though. Like, honestly, I be watching pundits more than I be watching journalists. Because, you go to the YouTube and you watch people like us talk about things that we read in an article rather than read the article ourselves. Literally, Hip Hop DX has a whole thing where those 90-second videos are them literally reading a news article to you and there's no additional information. Anyway.
Ted and I had dinner last night, and I like to do that with people that I interview. I like to know them. at least a little bit. And you mentioned about when art.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Having dinner before the interview. Chris, we never thought of that.
Articles started getting shorter when your editors would ask you, could this be a this many paragraphs? Can you talk about that for a minute? Because I thought that was so funny and insightful.
Well, I have a lot of frustrations with mainstream media, and I think a lot of musicians in your audience will relate because we're all facing the same pressure. And the pressure is to make things more like clickbait, to dumb down, to make things shorter. And I was telling you about how I started out as a writer. This is back just when I got out of college. Mm-hmm. And I began writing for some of the leading newspapers. And my entry point was writing book reviews. And that's what I was writing book reviews. And
that's
I remember
That's hard as fuck.
At the very beginning, they would say, Ted, could you write 800 to 1,000 words on this book? And I said, yeah. And I send it to them. They'd be fine. It would be well received. But a few years later, it was, Ted, could you write 600 words? Okay, 600 words. And then it was, could you do 400 words and really make sure no paragraph has more than 3 sentences? And, we really like those paragraphs that just have one
they're
sentence.
basically
That's
just
like
limiting.
an ideal paragraph if there's just one sentence.
Sorry. Go on, Chris.
Like, they're essentially, all I'm hearing is like, we're changing the way we produce information or send out information to make it easier for people to like click on it and like read the shit. But I think that's causing a problem because we're not actually giving a lot of the meat to what is supposed to be thing. Unless I'm like mistaken from what I'm understanding, it just sounds like there's a lot of regulations that are being told to him in terms of like.
They're definitely trimming out the content of like stuff like. By having the restrictions, you become more concise and it becomes harder to have nuanced takes and everything becomes a little bit more facty. And I don't mean that in a... Like, there's less less room for editorialized opinion if there is a limit on the words, because realistically all you can do in a 3-sentence paragraph is spit the facts of what you're trying to state for that particular paragraph before moving on. So it's like a way to, in my opinion, force journalists to promote whatever agenda via a limitation in their ability to apply the nuance required to use satire or other commentary pieces. Because, 400 words is real effing short. I don't know. Y'all can let us know in the comments. We're freestyling this. Everyone watching this. This is a freestyle.
And I remember I got to the point... I was reviewing a novel by Haruki Murakami called 1Q84, which is this 1,000-page novel. And I go, I'm going to review this in 400 words. And at that point, I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I am not going to do this anymore.
Right.
And so since that, I have turned down every freelance writing opportunity that's been presented to me for years now. And
bro, I would love freelance opportunities. If y'all want to pay me to do things, we can do things. Send that money. That's what we're saying.
Yesterday, one of the leading editors in New York said, will you do this? I just, no. And God bless them. I want these newspapers and periodicals to flourish. But I fear there's a race to the bottom where they're making things shorter and dumber. And I don't want to play a part in that. So
just on some other shit, I read the Hunter S. Thompson a couple of books on him. One of them was about his life. Or it was put together by people who knew him after he died. So it was an oral testimony book. And one of the things that changed is that the content pieces of this dude's youth would have cost a lot to produce. And then back in the day, people used to just spend $25 on a magazine subscription, and people would subscribe to it. Now we choose to subscribe to Patreons, wink wink, and things like that. And we don't actually subscribe to the news. None of my peeps pay for the local newspapers. None of my peeps really be copying stuff. So maybe they do online subscriptions, but the print versions is not happening. So reality is they're paying dude for word or whatever. So the budget on that side of it to produce the content went way the F up. Stuff people's expectations are super high for what they'll get for free. And then literally we as a people just do not enjoy the concept of financing media. We just don't. I don't know why we all think it should be free, but I really believe we think that. So now there's no budget to do what this guy remembers from his glory days when the jobs were cushier. And that's all love to him. it really must have been a wonderful time to be alive is what I'm trying to say.
Thing about Substack, if you see behind,
I'm late, but I wanted to make sure I thought of what I was gonna say first. I do think that like we pay for a lot of like information in terms of like you pay for education, you pay for like courses, you pay for all this shit to like learn other things. But like news about your community, news about like how the world's changing and stuff like that, I do think that that should be free. I think there should be
But
some
hold
sort
up.
of like funding,
So
but
news is
like
like, I don't mean like the news, like, yo, this happened, whatever, but I'm talking like real investigative journalism and like the other side of the news, right? Like, so there's like the main news, the shit where the reporter shows up with the camera and captures what happens in the race. But then there's like the other side where like people would have real time for opinion pieces or like investigations and the shit. But all that shit costs money. Motherfuckers gotta live. So like, if we're not gonna finance the publications and the various platforms, those platforms have to rely almost exclusively on ad dollars, and rich people, like literally that's what happened, is really rich people started buying all the fucking media platforms. So now the rich people keep them afloat, but they become vehicles to their voice. So if you don't really finance independent media, like watch, if I can't get financing on my own, I gotta go suck corporate dick and get financing. Like, what choice do I have?
right.
That's how the game works. So, like, inherently, it's just a matter of, do we want to see deeper investigative journalism, like some New York Times dope shit all over on an independent front? If so, I believe the obligation comes on us, the people who can, not those who cannot, but those who can, to put some of their fiscals into the people who do this. Like, I fucks with JJ McCullough, you know, like that dude puts a lot of effort into Canadian culture building or things like that. So like there's people out there who do this good work, indie, but they do need that financing. And so that's what I'm trying to say. It's like, I think in a lot of senses, it went from traditional media platforms into guys like a JJ McCullough or other various people like a Rick Beato with his 3.33 million subscribers. But like, anyway, I don't know. I was a little all over. But like, it's not that the news shouldn't be free. It's that like, if we want good journalism, we have to pay the journalists like they rock stars a little bit more.
I mean, hey, I'm all up for everybody getting paid and make your bag and make your money. It was more just like I wanted to understand a little bit more in terms of like what news. Like from my understanding, again, like if I turn on whatever news station and they're telling me about my city, I think that that should be like free.
Yo, but
like,
bro, if you wanna like know about the
hold
fucking
up. So like if we're now like moving on to like the news story is like a scandal with like Chris Chrome, and then you want to go into like a deeper documentary about the Chris Chrome scandal, and it's not just like here's the case, here's what y'all need to know and move on, then I think I agree. Like the
But also,
independent documentary could be like Patreon subscribe monthly and get
no, but
that
that, I
content.
mean,
Like
that's how
that's
the
like your
new
choice.
model would be. But like back in the day, it would just be the magazine. There was just the magazine. There was just the newspaper. So all the money went there, and then they paid these people to go do this deeper shit. Now it's like, yo, Johnny Harris is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Like y'all would probably know him, but he used to work for like actual institutions and now is self-financed to go do deeper journalism on whatever topics he wants. And like, that's kind of how it changed a lot, because a lot of rich people also bought all the newspapers and shit. But end of the day, we weren't paying for it. Like back in 2010, was y'all like paying for paper newspaper subscriptions and things like that? I don't think so. Anyway, then you can look at how Google fucked the media on some backlink taxing and shit if y'all want to go down that rabbit hole. But anyway, we should go back to this. We're good. This is gonna be a long one, Chris.
You had a YouTube video where you talked about this. Talk about that for a minute. Talk about the kind of this evolution of 3-minute songs, or historically about short songs versus long songs.
Well, I sometimes complain about the 3-minute song, but check this out. Right now, the music industry thinks their savior will be TikTok.
Right.
I mean, they're absolutely convinced that all the problems they have are going to be solved by TikTok. But I saw this study, and it's unbelievable. Someone analyzed the most successful TikTok videos. And they said the ideal music for a successful TikTok video is 16 seconds in duration. And I really can't believe that the future of music, the next breakthrough is going to be 16-second songs. I mean, this is like me getting down to those 400-word articles. Well, can you do one sentence, Ted?
Right. Right.
But this is the interesting thing. As you know, I've done a lot of research into music history, into things no one else has researched. I mean, really into the dark inner recesses of what
flex on them
was happening, and not just 100 years ago, but 1,000 years ago, thousands of years ago. And one of the things I learned researching a book of mine called Healing Songs was about music's ability to put us into a trance, to actually alter our mind states. So if you listen to a rhythm, what Andrew Neer discovered back in the early 1960s is eventually your brain waves match the rhythm of the music. Mm-hmm. But here's the catch. It doesn't happen in 16 seconds or even 3 minutes. It's more like 10 minutes.
Right.
You start falling into a trance. Began thinking about this. Is this relevant to our commercial music culture? And I started thinking, the Beatles had that amazing hit, Hey Jude, which was their longest track.
Yeah.
And I think it was because they finally got a song long enough for people to fall into the trance state. But I started asking myself, do people really want a 3-minute song? And then I started realizing something. First thing I realized is when bands play a song in concert, they almost always play it longer than they did on the record. It's almost as if instinctively, particularly look at TikTok.
Yes.
And I fundamentally don't believe 16-second music is the future of anything. And the industry is kidding themselves once again, because the music industry has a long history of kidding themselves. And so
I do want to chime in on this, but I'm curious to know what Chris thinks about song length after hearing all of that.
I don't know. Like, I think that if a song is good, whether it's 3 minutes, 2 minutes, even 7 minutes, if the song is good and you really fuck with it, then like you're gonna put it on repeat. Although I do think that like in terms of TikTok, let's say Facebook stories, Snapchats, IG stories and shit, it's more of like a promo. It's more of like you want people to be enticed, you want people to be curious about what it is you're trying to present, and if they choose to, they can go and get the full content. So I feel like there's a little bit of maybe some confusion where like 16 seconds is enough time for me to be like, yo, I want to listen. I had to think about it, but 16 seconds is like enough time for me to be like, hey, I want to listen to this in full or not. Like, it's just for me, like,
I don't know. I need more like a 30. But like, yo, in the first like 16, I agree. Like, I have my interest peaked or not.
I mean, so check it, right? Like, if the first, like, if you got like 16 seconds, and actually, I'm actually going to try this out during one of my promo runs, I think next month with one of the video teasers I want to drop. But like, the Holotape 3 promo teaser is 10 seconds. It's a little animated video, and it's just the intro to the song with the beat, right? That thing got up to like 822 views on TikTok. So like, that's the biggest I've ever done on TikTok, period. The next thing I want to do is similar thing, but like now I'm going to be rapping a little bit of my verse. But I feel like if what I'm saying in my verse doesn't entice people, why am I going to put a full like 30 seconds or 45 seconds if like the two first lines people are like, nah, fuck this.
I mean, for what? That's a weird statement, but I think for TikTok, okay, like TikTok as promo for a song is one thing, but I think sometimes what happens is you don't actually care about the whole song. You care about the part that went viral in that little TikTok. Like, there's a few songs where I don't give a fuck about the whole song. I care about that, like, 4 lines that was in the viral thing that I heard 100,000 fucking times. But TikTok as promo, yeah, it's effective. I agree. I don't really see a future of 16-second song lines, but they exist. They're called jingles. They've been used in commercials forever, and they're highly effective. Like, call 1-877-267-3001, Alarm Force. That ish been in my head since I'm a kid, bro. Or 3430343. Right? These are 16-second songs. They exist and they've just been part of marketing forever. You can call them what you want. They're 16-second songs is what I'm trying to say. But this is all from the perspective of a dude. And I think a lot of the old-timey people are not part of the underground scene where people are performing music. So I'm not as acclaimed as Ted Gioia is with his loving music history for thousands of years. But I do have a fetish for studying music history. And one of the main takeaways I've learned through my scholarly reading books, I'm not that deep into it like this dude is, but is music is highly created for the environment upon which it's performed. And this is true upon history. Certain sounds are catered towards certain room sizes. So ancient classical shits from like the 1600s would be for like mid-sized rooms with curved ceilings, or certain things are stadium tracks because they're expecting fireworks and light shows. And all of these different environments will shape the kind of music you write. As Eminem starts doing stadiums, Eminem starts doing stadium music. It just makes sense. That's where he's performing now. He can't be doing them underground things on the stadium stage. That doesn't translate to the stadium audience. This is something that I feel like nobody ever talks about in these conversations when they're having stuff about song length. I'm going to tie this in. I be performing, right? Like what? I think I did 37 shows last year. With that, I can tell you my average set length was less than 15 minutes. Now, how are you supposed to perform a 7-minute song in a 10-minute set? You know, like, or how do you do a 10-minute song when you have 10 minutes? That means if we're to like create music for the requirement of a 10-minute loop, the artist actually need to be given time slots that are bigger than 10 minutes. Because when you have 10 minutes, you're going to end up picking your shortest songs to perform. Like, I can't perform most of my catalog. Shit, my Lose Weight track is 4 minutes. It eats up half a set when it's 10 minutes. So what people start doing is making a lot of two-ish minute songs, because then they can, in their 10-minute set, fit like 4 in and give you a real showcase of diversity. Because if that one song you show doesn't hit with the audience, you might lose the audience. I've watched people walk right the fuck out because my song was too long and they weren't feeling it. And so I believe that the shorter time slot thing is highly related to hip-hop taking over the way it did, and the way hip-hop shows are structured, where you have like 12 to 15 artists on a single card and everybody got like 10 minutes and shit. So like he's spitting some things from like this scholarly perspective, but the live environment upon which most artists are starting doesn't allow for that kind of creation at the early points in their career. That was my point.
Yeah. I do think that there is a level of, if you had a 30-minute set and you put in a 7-minute song, if that 7-minute song doesn't slap the entire way through, I may leave anyway.
But it could be something where it's like baked into the middle of it, where by the time you're done your doobie, you come back in and I'm still performing and it's moved on to the next thing. Or like, but what I'm saying is you have freedom in longer sets. You are willing to do more theatrical shit. You're willing to put longer songs into it. But like, every single time I get booked, you ask, what's the set time? Then I have to go look at the MP3 length of every single song that I want to perform. And I mean, it might be coming up, but this is just kind of the reaction I had to this part. And I was like, Holden, you're reacting to shit he's going to counter. Anyway, shit that I love to hear about. Anyway, he's right. There's a whole last hour left, but what else are we going to do but react to what we hear, right, Chris?
Facts.
I would like to see...
I am working on a 7-minute song right now, though.
Exact opposite of TikTok. I'd like to see more of a push towards longer songs that really benefit from this trance state that you can get into after around 10 minutes.
The last time I did a Spotify countdown,
actually,
which I do...
Sorry. But like, okay, so sure, we put longer songs out, but like, I only have a certain amount of time, let's say throughout my day, to really be on TikTok or to be on like Facebook and shit. Because the other times I'm working or I'm doing whatever I gotta do, right? So like, is it beneficial to put longer content when I'm
Look
kind
at
of
the
living in this
hold
like
on.
fast.
Look at the length of the
like,
video. That look, people watching this, just look down at the length of this video on YouTube after. Let it be said.
I understand putting a video on YouTube. What I'm saying is like when we live in this type of like fast paced living, like,
Bro, there are literally like 4 people in our audience sitting here with us having the time to have a conversation. If motherfuckers can do that, they can play a 7-minute song. You know what I'm saying? Maybe not.
I understand, but that's not what I'm trying to explain.
Okay, so
what I'm trying to explain is like, again, for like the shorter content in terms of like TikTok or like stories and shit, like if I'm on a bus or something, I'm not gonna like sit there for like 7 minutes to see the song. Like I'm gonna go.
hold on. You're
spend
on a
like
bus where you might be there for like 20 minutes and you can't find 7 minutes to hear a song.
I personally want to scroll. Like I'm scrolling through looking. I don't know. I think like there is an aspect to possibly just.
I'm sorry, Chris. This is a Chris thing. You clearly have the time if you're on the bus. You have the time. You're choosing to use it differently.
You don't know that. What if I'm on the bus for like literally 5 minutes and I'm off?
There's still the part where you leave your crib and walk to the bus, the part where you wait for the bus, the part where you get off the bus and walk to your final destination. My point is, broski, like, you clearly have a 7 minutes in that little trip you're taking.
Fair.
Wake up, fault. But yes, I understand that your preferences may not be for 7-minute songs, but like on the other side, go look at the average length of some of these Deadmau5 songs and some of them joints, and they'd be like 9 minutes of like extended, super extended mix. Or you can go on YouTube right now and find the 7-minute fucking drill trap remix to Baby Shark that's just souped up and ready. Like, yeah, it's probably hard still.
From time to time, I did a video on the top 10.
That's another point. DJs be making 7-minute versions of everybody's song right now.
Songs on the pop charts probably 2 weeks ago, and I noted that there were only 3 songs that were over 3 minutes on the charts. Now we're getting back into early Beatles territory where on their first few records, there was never a song over 3 minutes. It wasn't until Rubber Soul or so that you started getting longer and longer songs. Now we've come back to these incredibly short songs. How much of this do you think is not just the effect of TikTok and the record labels using TikTok to promote the music for them and people's attention span from consuming social media and being on screens all the time and things like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram? What are the contributing factors to these things?
Well, there are a couple points I'd like to make. There are a number of factors pushing for shorter songs. First of all, you make more money on the streaming platforms if you have more tracks on your album.
Right.
So if you had an hour-long album with 60 songs on it, right? You know, we're going to make a bundle of money.
Yeah.
And so, first of all, people are incentivized to create very short songs. Mm-hmm. And I think it's always unfortunate when the creative process is unduly influenced by making a buck. And don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to making a buck, you know.
Broski starts the interview with, "Here's how I could make a better buck on this next site."
We all have to pay our bills, but at a certain point, the financial incentives can be out of whack with moving the music forward. So first of all, if you didn't have to worry about money and you could play any kind of music you wanted, would you still play the same kind of stuff you played tonight? And the sax player, he stopped and he thought. He said, "No, I wouldn't do that." He said, "Well, what would you do if you didn't have to worry about money?" And the sax player stopped. He said, "I'd play like Coltrane." And this was the funny part. He stopped and he said, "But people don't want that. That's intelligent." And I think that's the kind of thinking that's not just this individual, but this permeates the music business, that people don't have the attention span, mm-hmm. and they have to push things shorter and dumber. Now, the big question is that true?
Okay.
Is it in fact true that people...
All right. Before they answer, Chris, what do you think?
What, that people have low attention spans and that we have to push content that's shorter and dumber?
All the shit he just said. Yes.
I feel like it kind of ties into the point I was trying to make earlier, is really just we've made long content and people watch it. I watch long content. So clearly long content is still valuable and still has like value to it. But like, I don't know, like short content does have its value in terms of just getting me personally more hooked and more interested in things. I'm more likely to like.
You ride or die for Joe Budden, right?
Yeah.
That's the longest shit ever. Sure. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of all the creators you've mentioned over the last 5 years, Joe Budden is consistently the only guy that lasted. Not short content. I don't remember none of the other ones you hyped up out for that long.
I agreed with that. I'm confused.
Well, I'm saying that like in the world of attention spans, then all this short content burns through right quick too, because you're not like loyal to that short content. You might like get interested, but there's no loyalty there, no?
So I'm not really. I don't think I'm questioning the loyalty. I'm questioning more the. My standpoint on the content aspect is I like both of them, right? I like long content and I like short content depending on whatever the content is. What I'm saying is I'm not going to spend 5 minutes on a TikTok video or an IG story of content. I'm spending a minute and then I'm like a minute max and then I'm going.
It's a fucking story. Nobody's going to the stories to watch an hour-long movie.
That's all I was saying earlier. And at this, like, I like both length of content. I don't really have like an opinion on the length of content. Do I think that we are dumbing down information and pushing quicker shit to people? Yes, but I think that that's because just how we live our lives nowadays. It's just the easier way to get people to want to look at whatever longer content is behind it that's being promoted.
And that's facts. Little Alice, you can actually watch her stories on YouTube now. She started cutting out them and maybe filtering a few of them out and then uploading them to YouTube because they are pretty lengthy. But that's a good point too. There are people who literally watch Little Alice's stories for like 10 minutes. They take 10 minutes sometimes, bro. And that's one person. And I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like this attention span debate is weird. Like, often when people talk about, like, the smart versus dumb music thing, it's a knowledge thing. Like, I can appreciate complex bars like Black Dot because, you know, we did a bunch of album reviews. So if I want to, I can sit there and think about every line and extract some deeper meaning from it all. But I find it to be a high effort thing. And it's not really anything I ever really want to do. Like, I never feel like I want to go do that for fun. So the amount of effort that goes into consuming that music sometimes is, like, really high. And I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, is that there's, like, a knowledge set for pop music where, like, most people don't really, like, care about music theory. So, like I like Tool a lot, but like It's hard to listen to Tool on a regular day for me. Like, I fucks with them, but like I have to be like in a mood to like truly appreciate all the things I have to pay attention to fully appreciate this song. Because that's the thing, is when they say it's an intelligence thing, it's more like to fully understand why a song is great or not. You need to like literally know all the reasons why the song is great. Otherwise, like, go watch our early album reviews and you can see what it looks like when people don't know things. And so it is a matter of, I guess, musical intelligence, but like at the same time, being a live performer is a paid service where people are coming to that show to like, like I remember being in the streets one time and like the man Basics was freestyling in English in Montreal. Now, this is relevant because we're in public. It isn't like a private show. And this lady was like mad that like people weren't getting his bars. And I'm going, hold on. You're mad that the probably really French audience here is not appreciating the nuanced English this man is spitting. Like, what? Like, understand the room we're in and shit. So it's like, it does matter a lot because, like, music's kind of like this relationship too. So, like, you can do whatever you want, but if you want people to finance you, because there is the commercial aspect to it, you kind of have to build the relationship and understand in the middle of, like, what you want to do and what the audience want to hear. And, like, that's since time. It used to be, like, freestyle for the king or you die. That's not even a lie. Go Google that Icelandic poetry shit.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, I guess we can keep going. I don't know.
Do not have the ability to pay attention to something that's longer and more intelligent. Like,
oh, people do have attention spans though. Motherfuckers be playing video games all day long. It's just that, like, video games might be better than music to most people, or, like, you know, like, people watch fucking Netflix for 5 hours straight. You watch an entire season in a night. How is that no attention span? Motherfuckers just do not. You know, it doesn't make no sense when people talk that shit.
It's crazy, like, it's crazy because, like, when I think of video games, when I think of, like, series and shit, it's like, of course I'm focused on this thing that is consistently changing every fucking moment, and there's something new happening all the time. That's why I'm focused in it.
Bro, you're engaged in it. Like, when I play a video game, I'm using the controller and shit.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, I think where I'm having an issue is, like, what do you mean by, like, what do people mean by attention span with video games? It's like, bro, I'm not sitting here having to force myself to, like, read a book and stay quiet and restricted.
Let's not talk shit about reading books, bro. Like, when you actually get into reading books, the shit's as fire as video games.
I'm just saying, like, somebody for me, specifically for me as Chris Chrome, or even, as Chris Chrome, it's like, it requires more focus for me to, like, pay attention and, like, do the book
Chris,
thing, or, like, even
here
working.
You go. This will help you focus. See that cover? That will help you focus.
Right.
There you go.
But, like, in terms of comparing it to playing, like, video games, it's like, well, yeah, people are engaged in video games. There's, like, you're not just driving down the same.
Let me ask you another question. You playing Grand Theft Auto 5. You're in the car. Tell me the soundtracks, or even Cyberpunk. Like, the music in Cyberpunk is hard. Run the Jewels, as an example, has a track in Cyberpunk. And, like, they all had to create, like, new monikers for the video game. So they had to get into character for it. And then you're playing this game, and you're hearing great music, and it's, like, a fantastic way. I think video games has exposed me to music, honestly, in ways similar to how the club did back in the day for this dude. But, like, my point is, all that to say is, like, in 1983, Atari was trash or whatever, and Pong was not that great, and, like, fucking literally the E.T. video game had come out. You can watch that story if you want a great time on YouTube for a quick minute. And, like, entertainment, like, music was the lit as shit. Let's be fucking real. You'd go to the club, you'd be grinding on some girl, and, like, you'd then be smoking your little reefers or whatever y'all did with the record players, and it was a highly social experience. Then Call of Duty came. Motherfuckers like that better, apparently. I'm like, there was no Call of Duty in the 70s and 80s. But if you're going to try and tell me that if they had Call of Duty back then, the albums would get the same attention, nah, B. I'm telling you, Call of Duty would have still been a bigger thing, because, like, it just hit people. I don't even like Call of Duty. I don't even play that shit. People are too mean to me. It's not my vibe. But,
oh my God, the lobbies.
But you watch this, like, level of interconnectedness on the internet, and, like, there's just so much shit to do that you never had back in the day when people used to joke about how rocks were fun. Like, I don't know if y'all watched that 90s show. But goddamn, my version of the 90s in the city was harder than it was in Wisconsin, is what I learned. So, yes, I can see how if all you're doing is sitting in a fucking basement with a bag of weed, you're going to play the record, and it's going to hit you in a certain way, and you're going to sit there and discuss it with your homeboys. When you grow up with the Xbox, Halo, 2 TVs, and pizza, it's a different vibe. And it's really fun. I guess that's what I'm trying to. Lindell's like, you're just ahead of the interview, Holden. Anyway, I'm going to run it, and if the ad ruins the conversation for y'all a little bit, my bad.
Yeah. And I don't believe it. So fundamentally, in my own experience, I made a decision at a certain point in the past that I was going to assume that my audience was smart. I was going to assume that my audience was discerning.
I promise you this guy's audience is both smart and quote-unquote discerning.
And I was going to assume that my audience had very little tolerance for bullshit. Okay? I was just going to make that assumption.
Okay.
And they have not disappointed me. They have lived up to that. And I have found, particularly on Substack, I started occasionally doing these sort of short, punchy, entertaining articles to mix up my super long essays. But what I found is actually I get more clicks on the long ones.
Right.
And I do believe we underestimate the audience.
That's SEO, my G.
I believe we underestimate the reach.
Sorry, just to like literally the way SEO is basically structured would imply that the longer your article is, the more informative it's perceived on whatever search metrics and key things. You get more visibility, more quotables, more reshares, more link backs. And link backs is really where you get your traffic. Anyway.
Reading audience, I believe we underestimate the music audience. So although there is this perception that music fans want a 16-second song, I don't believe it. I believe people want to have their minds expanded. And he has these extraordinary plays that are all about what's happening in people's heads. You know, Hamlet's going there, to be or not to be that. If you actually study what those words mean, it's like this inner turmoil. And there was nothing in literature before that really dug into it. But around that same time in music, the sonata is invented, which is to demonstrate not the music, but the individual's music. A basso continuo comes out of music, which is to support an individual voice. Opera is invented, which is about these passionate stories about people's inner lives. You have all these madrigals, which are songs about...
I'm just going to say this is my favorite part of the interview so far because this is hard. And I'm so fascinated by the 1600 thing. And I already knew there was some... Because, that whole era is fascinating, right? It's like when the Renaissance and shit kicks off and, like, a whole lot of shit changes. But I never really thought about what he's describing here before. And that's fucking hard. That's fucking hard.
The inner torment I have because my love life is falling apart. You have the beginnings of what we call concertos now, which is not an orchestral piece. It's an individual battling the orchestra.
Right.
All around the year 1600, musicians discovered how to tap into their souls. What's going on here? Why are there all these artists I've never heard of?
Right.
And I started doing Google searches on them, and I found what I had heard from other people that had done this research. They're saying, all these artists that no one's heard of, they're all living in Sweden. Now, by pure coincidence, Spotify's headquarters are in Sweden. Now, draw from that what you will. And then there was an insider who sent an anonymous email to a web blog.
Okay.
Now, you can't prove any of this, and I'm always trying to be very careful about what I say.
Right.
And particularly, I don't...
Facts. Allegations, bro. Nobody trying to get sued by Spotify by implying that they rigged their fucking jazz playlist to promote Swedish artists. That's hilarious. I don't know. I feel like I had a point to say it a bit earlier, but then I got distracted because this dude is tangenting like a motherfucker. And, intelligent audiences and shit and, like, whatever. Fair enough. If you assume your audience is intelligent, they're going to come. Like, dead ass, we make the content we want to make. We know how to make flashier things. Y'all actually going to see me do some sellout-ass content on another channel when I start trying to do a couple of things to whatever. But come on, everybody knows how to, like, talk with a green screen background and cut in stock footage. Who doesn't know how to do that?
This is all speculation. But this insider said, well, let me tell you what's going on here. These people have agreed to do music for just a flat fee and give up all their royalties. Give up all their royalties or accept a very small royalty.
Yep.
In terms of placement. So I started digging into this. So I found that there was this one track on the Spotify playlist, and I looked. It had 4 million plays, and I clicked on the album it's from. And the album it's from has 2 tracks. The other track had almost no plays, and this one track had 4 million. And then I found this was, amazing to me that the placement on this jazz playlist at Spotify could get you more clicks than most of the tracks on the album of the year that just won the Grammy.
Yeah.
Something is strange in the state of Denmark. In the state of Sweden, when you have a situation where artists no one has heard of are getting all the clicks, and music that people would enjoy more is being left off the playlist. So I speculate.
All right, what do you think about that point, where because of the playlist and the algorithm, motherfuckers who don't deserve it, according to him, that was kind of what I took from him, are getting the spotlight. He's alluding to, and nobody's saying specifically, that these random jazz musicians in Sweden are getting specialized placement on this thing, and he hasn't heard of them. And most people in America might not have heard of them. Therefore, they're not as deserving of the spot on the jazz playlist as maybe, I'm going to assume, a Western counterpart that he's heard of. That's my understanding of what he just said. I'm curious to know what you think of that. And I say that because I had a conversation with somebody I won't mention where the idea was like, make sure when you're in a position of power to put the worthy people on it. And I'm like, yo, what does worthy mean? Worthy to me means you had my back, not you're good enough. Like, not your perception of what's good enough matters. Worthy is so subjective. So what do you think about that?
I mean, look, I do think that playlists are a very good way for like artists to get discovered and to get clicks, streams, and all that shit. I think people, just average listeners and just general people, like go to playlists and just kind of let it run during their day to get new music and stuff like that.
But if you're not registering the new person, right? Because I mean, the point he's making is that this person gets like 4 million streams, which is money. Everyone acts like Spotify doesn't pay, but like, it pays. I made like 500 Canadian off of Spotify last year. Let's not talk about how it don't pay. And I barely have streams. It was about 200,000 streams. We had to run up 200,000 streams, and that paid me about 500 Canadian. So like, hold up with this Spotify don't give you no money thing. It might not give you money from like what y'all think is fair, but that was money I'm declaring as revenue on my taxes this year. So question mark. But with that in mind, his point is like these people who are like less famous and unknown are getting these monetized opportunities when Grammy Award winners, basically again Western accolades and shit, are like not getting as many streams because of the algorithmic playlisting. So it's more about what's fair in this algorithm shift and how it exposes people.
I don't know, man, because like if you put out music and you do it organically and you feel good about that, then that's great. But if you are gonna like pay to play or make agreements and like give your royalties to other people,
it's not even about pay to play. What he's saying in regards to like this interview is that Spotify in Sweden is using their playlisting to promote Swedish jazz people at the cost of Western jazz people. And that the power of influence from an algorithm can make other things moot or change who's deserving of being in the position and getting these streams and money.
I don't know. I don't know if I actually have a developed. I don't know if I have a developed opinion on that. If it is true, then I think it kind of sucks because there are people who are making music and genuinely do this out of like love and want to do it, and they're not getting the recognition or the push that they need to be able to do that. On the other hand, I mean, I guess I'm like kind of blocked by the whole like business is business, I guess. If like they are able to push their artists who could potentially make streams and get more money quicker, then like I kind of understand why they would maybe want to do that. Do I agree with it?
I mean, yeah, I know. I meant Zamanel meant like dude in the video, and it's a fair point. We didn't let him finish his point. I don't know how to make interview reaction videos, internet. This is the first one. Bear with us.
That the playlists are.
That wasn't about you, Zamino. I'm always talking to the future comments. It's the future comment. That's what happens after you do YouTube a long time. You just picture the comments that will appear at certain moments in your video.
Determined by what's most profitable for the streaming platform. This is not good for the musical culture. Let me give you an analogy.
Okay.
In the old days, I used to shop at Barnes & Noble and other bookstores. And when you walk into Barnes & Noble, at the front of the store, there's a table that has, hey, these are the books you should really buy.
Right.
So it's the first thing you see.
Yeah.
I long assumed that these were the best new books. But then someone told me, oh, Ted, come on, they're paying for placement.
Right.
These aren't the best books that came out that month. That's the books that the publisher gave them some money. Okay, well, this makes sense. Now, I understand the new owner of Barnes & Noble got rid of that. And he said, we're going to now go to a different system where the people running the store that really love books get to take books that people might actually enjoy,
right,
and put them on the table. I heard the results now are really great. They're actually having book sales go up rather than down each year. And it's not a small matter. It's not a small matter. Do you promote the music or the books or whatever that people were going to enjoy? Or do you pitch something that makes a buck for you? And I worry about our musical culture if, in fact, the institutions that control everything, because literally the most important people in music now are the CEO of Apple, the CEO of Google, the CEO of Spotify.
That's right.
The hedge funds that are buying up all the publishing rights. These are the most powerful people in music. None of them are from a music background like you and me.
Right.
These are people from a tech background for the most part. I worry about a situation in which people that I fear do not genuinely love music. They don't genuinely care and know about.
Did the greasy music executive types not fit the same role of the tech people? Or am I missing something here? Anyhow, that was just a little comment on that point.
Making decisions on what everyone's going to hear based on.
Like, broski, you're going to say me there's no payola back in the day? Like, I hate when people start talking that payola talk. Like, literally every story I ever read about every rapper that ever made it has payola in the story. Every one of them. Payola.
Profit maximization. I think that not only explains the fake artist situation, but may also explain why there's declining loyalty. People don't love music as much as they used to. I know that seems like an extraordinary generalization.
I just made a video about that, about Gen Zers. Don't you know? This is just my own. You know, from talking to kids. I talk to kids all the time. I have young kids. I talk to their friends, and they're just not engaged in music. And the loyalty part of it, I think, and
I talk to young kids, and they can tell you every fucking DJ and every fucking weird-ass subculture mix on SoundCloud you can think of, though. So I don't know 100% what he's talking about. And some of these songs is 9 minutes long. You know what I'm saying, Chris? Like, I don't know if you've seen that phenomenon play out.
Not yet.
What?
Not yet.
Fair.
And Sting said this.
Or, like, I met this girl at a party, and, like, she's, like, 19. And she was telling me how all she listens to is what she calls garage music. And it's literally just music, not like the genre y'all know. Maybe it is. But, like, it's people that are in bands that, like, record on some, like, 1980s punk aesthetic of, like, in their garage recording and shit like that. Like, I hear all kinds of passionate, invested music things from, like, 19-year-olds when I meet them in real life and ask them about their preferences.
Too, the fact that you can just turn on a water faucet, you get access to anything through streaming, whereas before you used to buy albums and cherish them and own them. And,
absolutely.
And there's something to that, right?
And I'm not gonna be the old man yelling at the clouds or
bro.
lawn. I don't blame.
Bro, Ashniko's got hella loyalty. Like, these people got loyalty. Like, you can look in the underground. Like, I watched this guy, Young Sammy, perform, and he's got, like, this whole flock of girls loyal to his cause. But he's also out there performing at local bars and shit. Like, this seems like such an outward-in perspective without a whole lot of inward-out perspectives. You know what I'm saying?
These people, because I think we have not served them well.
Mm-hmm.
and we have not given them a music culture that can engage them to the extent that they're capable of being engaging. This goes back to my fundamental belief that people want to have mind-expanding experiences, and they want these transformative experiences from music. And I believe that the
So I'm hearing he likes acid back in the day.
power brokers in the music business are letting them down.
They're preventing it.
They're preventing it
by the
from
things
happening.
that they are pushing. Essentially.
Absolutely. So I'm not blaming the youngins.
No,
I think that in
they're
many
not,
ways.
I mean, to me, they're not engaged because the things that they're hearing are not engaging.
Absolutely. Our generation is as much to blame, if not more so than this, or maybe the people a little younger than us. I don't know. But still, it's the decision makers that are creating the musical culture. And if I were 17 now, and I turned on the radio, that's an antiquated, but or a playlist of the top hits.
Yeah.
I just don't think young people be doing that. Like, it does sound kind of like let's say you're trying to be in the know of shit. The most amateur way you're going to do that is click on the first playlist. That's like what I expect my mom to do on Spotify. I mean, like, look, I talked to a few young people, and they all have these really unique experiences. Like this one dude, I met him through the channel, and we just chatted up. He's like a younger Scottish dude. And, like, all he does is look for songs with less than 1,000 views and just find gems. You know, like, I think that, like, the measurability of the habits has changed, and the way that people measure interest and stuff is different. But, like, there are people who think my shit's fire. This guy doesn't know who I am. There's no metric in the fucking universe that says anybody likes my music. But that doesn't discount the fact that to a couple of people, my shit's the dopest.
Right.
And like, there's no way to measure that. And then the fact is that as there's this anti-celebrity culture taking place with the younger markets, there's a lot more of an interest in finding these underdog people to follow who are not in this corporate sphere as exact and doing this celebrity shit, that are looking for this more authentic, imperfect experience where you can go meet the people and be part of the supporting it. And the fact is that tier is not measured. Nobody follows it. So it's weird because then you're not measuring interest correctly and a few other things because Billboard ain't reporting shit the same, or like the older ways of perceiving interest and record sales and things like that, they don't mean the same thing versus, like, I don't know. I don't know if they'll get there, but I would love to hear what they talk about DJ remix culture or not, because if they don't touch on that, it would be really weird, you know?
I would probably lose interest in about 5 minutes.
Now, Ted, people will say when I do a top 10 Spotify countdown on the most popular songs, well, those aren't the most popular songs. That's just what Spotify says. And I say, wait, no, this is this is true. Well, and you wrote an article about this recently about Groundhog Day. This relates to this, about the same songs keep reappearing. I stopped making these top 10 pop Spotify countdowns because they're the same songs month after month after month. Why is this?
Well, it's fascinating because it used to be songs would go into rotation on a radio station. They would say, these are the top 40 hits.
Mm-hmm. Hold on, because we have control. Anyway, he's probably going to talk about that.
And every week the list would change a little bit.
Yeah.
But over time you started seeing radio stations and playlist curators and everybody in the industry becoming more risk averse.
Right.
And if there was a song that was popular, well, I'm not going to take it off I'm not going to be the one to take it off the list.
Right.
And all of a sudden you had this situation where songs would get into rotation and would never leave.
Right.
Which made it very difficult for the next song.
Yeah.
That's a really fair point he's making.
And it's all because of this risk-averse, cautious mentality on the industry. But then I saw this.
So, like, just add to it. It used to cost something like $50,000 to promote a single, like a brand new single, like all in, all the payola, all the shit that you got to do. And the last I heard, it's something like $4 million to promote a new single. So, like, the entire industry shifted towards this risk-averse mentality. But I never considered it from the perspective of, like, how the radio people also kind of need to be playing the same shit. Otherwise, they're going to be the one guy with that one hit that everyone's expecting to hear, and that could be problematic if that hit still got living power. Super interesting.
think I listen to more new music than any other music critic out there. I can't prove it, but
I think Anthony Fantano might have you beat, my G.
So far this year, I have listened to...
I'm talking shit. I do not know at all how much Ted Gioia listens to. Y'all could let me know in the comments if you have an opinion on an informed point of view.
Almost 800 new albums in their entirety, okay? I listen to all genres.
We're only in May.
I know. I have listened to almost 800 new albums this year.
Yeah.
I devote several hours every day to this.
Okay.
I listen to every genre. Obviously, I'm a jazz person, so I listen to jazz, I listen to classical, I listen to rock, pop, country, soundtrack, reggae, and I try to find obscure stuff. What's happening in Africa? What's happening?
800 is a lot. When you said that, I was like, oof. But like that also like that has an impact on your like something I don't think a lot of music critics are like talk about a lot. Like I've been listening to 800 albums in a year, but yo, when you do this review thing and you are listening to like 3 albums critically a week, and then you never really sit with music anymore. Your entire influx and perception is based off of almost novel stimuli and like what haven't I heard recently or a few other. That was for me. It could be different for everyone, but you're constantly listening to new music to a point where it's not at all like that high school experience that I once had where like I would play my Chemical Romance CD front to back because I had my CD player and that was what I had. Or Green Day's International Super Hits is another one. But I also, you know, like that was how we did it back then. And then you start doing this album review shit and I'm like, nah, this isn't how people listen to music. People don't do this. This isn't right. You can't compare this experience to like regular people's experiences with music, is I guess where I'm going with all that.
Well, I guess what exactly is the experience that they're not doing? Like they're not sitting down and listening to whole albums anymore?
800, bro. Like, yo, we listened to what? Like maybe in a weekend we might have done 3 reviews. That's like 40 something songs. Each review, bumping that album like 2 or 3 times. The next weekend, you're already on to the next one. You don't really go back that much because you're always so like, all this new shit came out and I got to hear it. And I mean, to a degree, I guess fans do that. But when you're doing it as a reviewer, it's very mission oriented and it's super different than like fans and fan behavior where it's curiosity and passion driven.
Yeah, I agree.
Because 800 is crazy. Holy shit. That's like Warren Buffett reading levels.
Indonesia, what's happening in Japan. I'm really determined to have the pulse of the music culture today. And what I find, there's great music out there, but it's never coming from a major label. It's all indie and self-produced.
Yeah.
And so when I look at the Groundhog Day phenomenon, I don't blame the musicians. There are plenty of musicians out there that could rock our boats and blow our minds. They're not given a chance. And we're letting them down, but then obviously the flip side of that is we let down the audience, because if they were exposed to this music, they would be a lot more excited about what they're hearing. So it's once again, and I know people think I'm so, Ted, why do you hate streaming? I don't hate streaming. I love streaming. It's the business model and the decision makers that are letting us down. So that's that.
I guarantee you some motherfucker in the 90s was talking all the same shit about music videos and crap.
That's a fundamental problem there behind all these things we're talking about.
Now, you predicted their business model would tank. You tweeted about it back in 2018, I believe.
Well, you know, I should go into financial advice because it's funny. I did this article.
Yeah, Netflix as well.
I did this article in like February saying why Netflix would falter. And since then, Netflix's share price has dropped 70%. And someone said, Ted, did you short them? Well, no, but you know, it just was obvious to me that the Netflix model doesn't work. And this goes back to the fact that although I'm a musician, you know, I got an MBA from Stanford, a degree from economics in Oxford, and I worked.
Yo, weirdly, I was thinking about the Netflix model and like that 90s show and like how that show is trash because it's only 10 episodes long. And the Netflix model is these weird 10-minute experiments. And like, if you're going to produce a sitcom, it's got to be like 20 plus episodes a season. Like look at like Blackish and Grownish and that shit. They're long ass seasons. You really sink in, and it takes like 10 episodes of 20 something minutes an episode to like really get to that like comfort zone with characters. Like, you need a good 4 hours of watching before you're going to feel nice with them and shit. So I see where you're coming from. Netflix made some terrible choices along their production days, blowing their $1 billion budgets.
Netflix, they have almost no movies available that are more than 10 years old.
Right.
In fact, if you want to see a black and white film, I don't even know if there may be like three. I mean, the whole history of cinema disappears from Netflix.
Yeah.
And so there's a narrowing of choice, which I think.
But then you can go to all the other ones.
Is wrong. But
No, but like, don't you go on Prime and be like, damn, these are some old ass movies? Or you go to like Disney Plus and you're like, that shit's like 1960 something. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's not like we lack in I get his bigger point though. I get his bigger point. There is a threat here, and in Netflix in particular, I guess.
I pointed out that no one has done and I had done this early on in my life. Once again, in business analysis. I did this analysis of what I called the closed system versus the open system. Okay, now bear with me for a minute here.
All right. In
that, I'll give you an example. In the early 1960s, there was a credit card. It was the Visa, but it wasn't called Visa back then.
Okay.
It was called Bank Americard.
I remember that.
And you could only get it if you were a Bank America customer.
Mm-hmm.
And Bank of America made a fortune because they had the credit card, and people were signing up. But they had a closed system. You could not get the card unless you were a Bank of America customer. Mm-hmm. Absolutely closed system. And they thought, this is the way to go. Why should we share? Because we got it, we're going to dominate. But what happened is 300 other banks got together and introduced MasterCard. Okay? So now it's, wait a second. We had an advantage with our closed system. This open system is kicking our butt. So,
bro, I had no idea that's how Visa and MasterCard came to be. It's not hard. That's hard. Lindell, this is fun. This is fun. I'm enjoying this. This might be more fun than album reviews. Not to say I don't like them, but this is fun. Are you having fun, Chris?
Dryness, I do like the information and the knowledge. I didn't know about the whole how Visa and MasterCard became to be, so that was cool.
Chris is like, this feels like school.
It's not that it feels like school, it's that I'm very interested in just kind of listening to what they're talking about more, and if I have some opinions, I'm like, this is kind of what I think, but so far I agree with a lot of what you've been mentioning.
Chris is like, make sure we do a reaction video last night at the bar. He's like, we have to make sure to cut this shit up and talk a whole bunch. This is how they do it, Holden. You have to make sure that we do this, Holden. All right, I'll get back to it.
They had to turn Bank of America into Visa and make it available for everybody. So this is example number one, is that there was a closed system that locked out everybody, and all the competitors got together and beat up on them and forced it to open.
Right.
And then I gave a dozen other examples. When bank ATMs, the same thing. Bank of America, you can only use our ATM if you're a Bank of America customer. But they were forced to open up because the STAR system was open. Incomes lost out to VHS because Sony would not license, and they wanted a closed system. So anyway,
would not license to porn. Let's finish the thought, my G.
Go through this history. Every time in history, when you have a closed system where we're going to control it all ourselves, and they're competing against...
Deadass, the same kind of thing happened with Blu-ray and HD, whatever. The second Blu-ray started publishing porn because Sony at first was on some Puritan shit, like, I don't want to do this. We don't want to deal with porn. And HD started winning the battle. Then Blu-ray was like, fuck it. And then within a month, HD DVDs were, like, deaded.
Openson revisited what I had written, the exact words of what I had written in 2018.
Yeah.
And what I didn't remember this. I said, there are problems there, but they're not going to materialize for 24 to 36 months.
Right.
And if you look at the Spotify share price, I'm going to pat myself on the back. It reached its peak between...
This guy has spent the whole interview patting himself on the back. The whole interview has been that. However, fair enough. I would do the same thing. I'd be bragging about how I predicted Canada would make the World Cup in the 2022 World Cups. Nobody cares.
24 and 36 months after the IPO, and then...
I predicted that in 2010.
tanked.
Yeah.
So once again, I should go into giving stock market tips. I made a wrong decision doing all this music.
It's his moment on my platform where we get to talk about it. Thanks, Breakfast Cereals. Appreciate you.
Music writing. But the bottom line is the Spotify model. I don't think Spotify's going away. And as I've said, I think it would actually be better for our music culture if it did go away. We could build something better. It will continue, but there is not going to be enough money it generates from music to keep everybody happy. Because they have to pay publishers, they have to pay.
It's not lost on me. I'd behave exactly like this motherfucker if I was in his shoes. It's not lost on me, people. Right, Chris? Yeah, fair.
Composers, they have to pay record labels, musicians.
Well, they can't keep anyone happy because their stockholders are not happy. The musicians are not happy. Nobody's happy with it.
There's not enough money.
Holden's happy with Spotify, but I'm not a shareholder.
Generated from music streaming, to pay all the bills and profits and make everybody happy. And so what I predicted back then was that some people would benefit disproportionately. The people that were actually inside at the table when deals were negotiated would do okay, but the people that weren't sitting at the table were going to exist on crumbs. And I feared that the musicians would get the short end of the stick. And this is another thing where I'm very careful about what I say, because I can't prove these things. But based on the few documents that have been leaked, I suspect if we could actually see the details of the terms between Spotify and the record labels, particularly the large, powerful record labels, we would be horrified. I can't prove that. But I'll just give you one more example.
Wait, and if someone knows anything or has any documents, please leak them to Ted.
No, I guess.
Whatever just got said there was definitely told by the legal team. Take that shit out. I just want to touch on one thing. Like, what's the alternative world, right? Like, I started releasing music in 2012 to YouTube and like Reverb Nation and SoundCloud and shit, I guess. And end of the day, like, Spotify has simplified my life a bit because at the very least I'm on the places people listen to music. Like, the onus of responsibility is not necessarily on me to fully like have to be in the streets selling mixtapes to pray that my album's gonna get moved out. Like, I don't know, like I look at like what is the alternative to this shit and how would it really play out. Like, I would argue that music disproportionately benefited salespeople in the past, and now it's going to disproportionately benefit people who understand content management and project management skills on like a self-sufficient thing. It's just like the skill set it favored, but like, I don't know, like it feels like there's just a lot of tools now that exist that allow people to hear my music in a professional capacity next to their favorite artists that never would have existed in this past era without some gatekeeper blessing me. And maybe their like whole point here is that we need better gatekeepers or something, but to me it feels like there's a lot more power in the hands of the independent artists to go out there and like, as much as everyone be like, artists don't need to be like doing all the work, artists are supposed to be looking for managers for their careers to go do all the work, and most of us put like no effort into finding a manager. Guilty. Anyway, it's that kind of shit. Like, what do people like what are we all gonna do? Go to Bandcamp and then have the same problem on Bandcamp? Like, it's gonna just be some issue where like payola comes through, and like, I'm not saying that the deals that are made in the back end of Spotify are proper or whatever, but I'm like, it's people that really appreciate this legacy era of music that feel the way that they do, I find, more than somebody who's just come in on the internet and just come through on this different experience. You know, like the 17-year-olds I meet who like get the opportunity to release music are really happy with the situation in ways where they get to be superstars in their local schools and have a lot of exposure, training, and things that were just not available in like fucking 2005 when I was in college. You know, like, anyway.
I want to be very careful about what I say. I cannot prove that evil doings are happening. I just have a hunch that if we could see what those documents were, it would be unsettling. I did see something just the other day saying, this is an article that was just published 2 days ago, And it said, it looks like the major labels have so much influence on Spotify playlists, you could almost say they control them. And I go back to what I was telling you before. I find the most exciting music now is indie and self-produced. So what does it mean for our broader musical culture when those are precisely the...
Wasn't like most of the early hip-hop indie and self-produced? Wasn't most of the early punk indie and self-produced? Wasn't most of the early everything indie and self-produced? And then pop like kind of notices it and then polishes it and makes it mass appeal. I feel like Mans is not spitting anything other than the facts of history.
I don't really know what his like anger is. It just, so far what I'm getting from this is like he seems a little bit upset of how we as consumers consume music nowadays, or as we as artists are trying to get on nowadays. Like that's like all my brain keeps coming back to. Like I'm trying to dive deeper.
Like his bigger point is that the independent scene is more good than pop. Like no shit. That's not news to anyone. Right. That shouldn't be news to anyone. Like go back to the 90s. It wasn't different. Go back to the 80s. I'm pretty sure it wasn't different.
Like the only thing that I would say is like there's an aspect to your local community and like that personal interaction when you had to be like on the streets selling mixtapes and like really trying to build your name within your city.
Are you gonna tell me that geography lottery wasn't a thing in the 60s? Like how many talented underground indie bands were limited to their Bucktown Nowhere local bar and their little $250 a night gigs in history? Like I don't really understand his bigger point. It just like acts like there wasn't just a shit ton of shit happening in history that was never recorded, you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm just feeling away.
They're being excluded from the playlist. So once again, I only have bits and pieces of information, but my prediction, I wish it was a cheerier prediction, is I don't think Spotify's going away.
No,
but I don't think
lit.
it will ever generate such...
As a consumer, it is one of my favorite $15 a month I spend. I love paying for Spotify. That shit's hard. Spotify made my life better.
Efficient cash from music to pay off all the stakeholders, and I fear a world in which the musicians who create the fundamental artistic work on which all the money is made, because if that song did not exist, there would be no money.
Right.
Yo, does anybody ever pull like the vast majority of musicians, like the 99% of us that like really don't make money, and ask us what we think? Or do they just talk to like the industry peoples or like the more well-known people about these things, like people who are like getting bags from multiple sources? But like I never hear the interview with like the hundreds of rappers I've met who love the Spotify experience and aren't about the money and love the fact that they can connect with their audiences and shit. Like somehow I feel like this dude's not tapping into the same data sets I get to tap into due to anecdote.
I fear that...
Go on.
No, I have nothing more to say.
Well, I was going to be like, I like Spotify and the streaming platforms because it allows me to reach people further that I would never have been able to reach to, or at least I think so back then. Like, yes, I could travel. Yes, I can go city to city. Yes, I could do this. But like,
could you?
There is... No, I know. I could have. But I wasn't...
I mean it like not in a facetious way. I meant like, bro, I could not have. Where I come from in life, no, there's no way I was traveling like that back in the day.
I don't mean it so like literal. I mean like these are options that you had back in the day again with like the selling of the mixtapes and out of the trunk and then like all the fucking groundwork. But it's like nowadays I could like put out my track and then just link it to somewhere on like whatever platform and then connect with somebody in a completely different country a lot faster.
Facts, like homeboy we have
that as a value.
Like homeboy we have was able to leverage Spotify to get on a Russian song. Like, you know, like there's things like that, like, or the man's fucking Nero in the UK. I'm on this track with the man's Nero and this next guy in, I think it's New York, and we'd all never met in real life and shit. And
I mean, I wouldn't have met my producer of my project coming if it wasn't for the internet or for the YouTubes.
You're not gonna shout out your guy,
Dwayne Hayes. I don't.
You know, he came from here. That's what I'm saying. But like, anyway, these are just different perspectives, I guess. I'm not saying I'm right. It's worth noting we don't get paid like that, and we are not successful like that. And I'm saying I love Spotify. Why is nobody asking my opinion and like getting the actual? Because my music's part of that blood. There are people who take, there are like people who listen to my shit on Spotify too. So like you know, like you're not fully looking at the bigger picture is how this guy's perspective sounds to me.
Would you think that, do you think there's like a capital gap? Like, because like we technically make money off of Spotify. We're technically like paid artists, like we get revenue, but because we're not,
we lose money.
Because
we ain't making money.
Well, what I'm saying is,
we make
like,
revenue. That's a fair statement.
Fair. I'm looking at it, I guess, very literal. Like, I can open up my DistroKid wallet and be like, this is how much you've made off of your streams, right? But our money is not as compared to the money that's being thrown around, or like with all these other record executives and labels and shit like that. So I think it's like, when you want to have this discussion, is there, I don't want to sound like an asshole, but is there like a benefit to talking to us?
Well,
Like,
I mean, if you want to answer the question, do artists, the people whose music fuel the platform, like Spotify? And from what I've seen in the stats, it's in the ballpark of like 95+% of people who don't get paid like that on Spotify. You can't like you should probably ask a lot of the like broke ass less than 50 fucking followers a month kind of thing, or like you should, because they're there. We are a lot of people paying a lot of money collectively, because most of us are paying a distributor of some kind and have access to that tool. So I think it would be a lot more interesting to hear from like a pool of 10,000 people with no fans and hear how they feel about Spotify and what it's done for them, more than established names and established this and record deal that and how the labels are, because that's such a minority of the user base. It's honestly really community-like is how I see Spotify. It's borderline a social media. Like, based on the technical definition of a social media that I have written in a file somewhere, Spotify qualifies as a social media. It's a content publishing platform where people can follow and interact with other people's content. Thus, it's technically a social media. But it is one. Like, you can follow other user accounts and see what music they're playing and shit. Like, it's different than just some label shit. And there's so many elements to the conversation I do not believe I've ever heard any of these music people bring up, because they don't work in software. But I worked in software and did community shit. So,
what other industry is putting all its stakes and investment in a 70-year-old technology? And let me push even further. It's a data storage technology. So think of what's happened in data storage since 1948 or 49, when the long-playing album was invented. And I asked myself, couldn't we have something that would be like a vinyl album but better?
Right.
Isn't there an opportunity now to do
do vinyl better?
Do vinyl better. And I think it would have all the advantages of vinyl. One of the great advantages of vinyl is ownership. Is when people own a record, they're more committed to the music, more committed to the artist. They enjoy it more. You and I are old fogies.
Do they enjoy it more? No, look, I'm not actually going to fully dispute that point. I read 48 Laws of Power and shit, and so one of the things I do is when I choose a book, I buy it, because there is something to the psychology of if you purchase something, you appreciate it more, or at least you take it more seriously. So there is maybe a psychological component to, like, I actually dead ass probably like the Jesus of Suburbia album by Green Day, and a lot more, because not only did I purchase that album, but I also purchased the live performance DVD after. So I put like, $50, $60 into that shit. And for life, I like that album. I don't know if there's a correlation between that. So I'm not saying he's wrong, but I don't know if he's right either. Because, you get to hear more music when it isn't on a Supervynyl and ownership. Like, ownership's an interesting thing too, like on a tangential point. To really explore that topic, look at classic retro video games and the archival efforts of that world as the market switches from plastic cartridges with the data stored on it to a leasing model where the various publishing companies have the right to revoke access to these games, effectively annulling their existence from the internet at any time. So in the same sense of it, having it on vinyl preserves the music, whereas something I've learned digging into Montreal music, there's several artists where, because I didn't steal the music when I had the chance to, which maybe I should start stealing people's music more. I mean it like to play on radios and shit. I have like legitimate purposes to do this, in my opinion. But like music disappears because people stop paying their DistroKid fees, or for whatever reason they pull their music. And there's been several songs I liked that are no longer available anywhere. And had I cop that on a disc, so to speak, they can't do that to me. Or if I can acquire that file in some way and put it somewhere, they can't restrict my access to it. So it is a really interesting point, because like I've pulled music before. Like there's shittier mixes of songs that used to be out that are not the current versions, like going from an EP to a project or something. I did that one. So it's maybe you like that other mix better, but now you don't have that choice. I took it from you and I gave you this version of the song. So it's a really interesting point, especially when you look at like what Kanye West does sometimes with like completely changing an album after it. I don't know if you have anything here, Chris, or if I'm just rambling and you're like, this is taking forever.
No, I mean, because I was gonna say that I think there is an aspect of like when you have a vinyl, when you buy the CD, you kind of like appreciate the music more. But then my brain was also like, okay, but in a way you could argue I pay for my Spotify and I create my own playlist, so I also do value my songs
Bro,
in my
it's not even the same
which,
cost point.
which
Did you ever do buying CDs? Like, did you ever buy CDs like that, or like were you just too young for that shit?
I mean, I think I bought one CD. I did receive CDs, and I had CDs made because my dad made CDs for me. Um, but like a lot of my music came from streaming, like
So like
LimeWire, ripping
dead
songs and
ass
shit.
man, it used to be like I would get my paycheck on Thursdays, and because of where I was at Abbott, so I would head back to Fairview, and there was the Music World and the HMV, and every single paycheck I would drop like 40, $50 on copying CDs. Like I had a fat collection, right? So like the cost of a song or whatever that you would put into music, it was more like a couple $100 a month if you had like a budget like mine, versus, and so you like, and that was it, bro. It wasn't like if that album was trash, you got a trash album for $15 too, and you love that one song you loved or whatever.
Yeah, I guess there is that difference because I don't actually I have more freedom within my streaming service to like just pick the song and not have to be forced to listen to that whole album, or at least felt like I wasted money on an album that I don't like just for one track.
I was excited to go CD shopping, and there is a bit of a nostalgic factor to like I miss it, where you would have no fucking idea what anything sounded like. I mean, there was that little thing that had the CDs you could listen to, and in many places you had like the listening stations and shit, which are pretty fire, but like a lot of it was almost like gambling, where like you really had no idea what the fuck this album was gonna sound like. You had like whatever singles were out, and half the time I was buying shit for the singles or whatever. Or I like to get the greatest hits, and the greatest hits shit was like a good way to figure out a band, and then I could go to the albums and see like which of the songs I liked off the greatest hits or off of whichever albums, and kind of go like that. Yeah, that's lit. You started buying vinyl for every song. Like, can you get like a single printed to a vinyl, or like you get the vinyls of the individual singles breakfast cereals? That's a super interesting point. But I also love the album inserts. I want to comment on that right quick, Zamanal, because I used to cover my walls, actually. I used to take the things out the CDs, and my wall, when I was a teenager, I don't even think I said this before, was just covered in like album inserts and shit. Like my favorite one was Sum 41's Chuck, because it like unfolded into this crazy poster, and it was so fucking cool. And I used to just take those, and I used to think that was fire. My whole wall was just like kind of like the vinyl shit, but with like CDs, because like I used to cop CDs, but everybody knows CDs is trash technology versus vinyl and shit. Anyway, Chris is back, and the ad's gonna start, so I guess I'm gonna start playing the video. But the only thing I would say about buying digital copies of shit, that like a place like iTunes can also still pull your song and kill it if they want. Like, even if you own it, let's say you lose a downloaded copy, at a certain point, if you end up losing that file, you can get to a point where you can no longer download that song again. Like, it is possible as long as a digital store has access to the song. Anyway.
Would be to have this Supervynyl product that would revitalize ownership and would be a collectible, have better audio quality. And let me just make one more point on this. Most people nowadays, when they listen to music, they listen to it on a handheld device or on a small device, which has crappy sound.
Facts.
And I say, I had a better sound system when I was 16 years old than most people use nowadays.
That's right.
And
on a tangential version, it's the same thing with TVs. I don't remember what video it was, but like the old box TVs had enough space in them for fat ass good speakers, and our like little thin TVs just don't have the space for the speakers and shit. So in a lot of senses, unless you boost your sound system at home with additional technology, most people's TVs is also way shittier when it comes to sound with a lot of additionals in the graphics. Wild, eh?
Which just kind of makes it feel like, here's the new improved TV. Shitty sound. Gotta go spend more money. Get the better speakers.
Yo, but you got to have a sound bar. And even then, I wonder if a sound bar is better quality than like, because when I was a kid, right, like we had them gray boxes. We had them like fat speakers and shit, right? And then my dad would put them in the corners of every one of the rooms, go into the amp and the preamp and all that shit. But like literally like these fat, like fucking like, you could have like cranked it. We couldn't even raise the volume. That's how good the shit was. You know what I mean?
So like when I go to my mom's place, right, in like the little living room area, they've got a sound bar and flat screen TV, whatever. But when you go into the basement and you like set up down there, I feel like because it's a bigger room and there's just, I guess, more space or whatever, my stepdad went and got like the surround sound setup. So he's got the, maybe not like the big fat speakers you're talking about, but essentially he's got 2 extra speakers. He's got the 4 mini speakers looped around the whole place. He's got that whole thing. He's got the subwoofer and everything. And I think that maybe there is an aspect of like, just for soundbar and like speaker systems, I think it depends on like the room and maybe where you are putting certain shit, because that also could affect like the volume and like how you are hearing whatever it is you're hearing.
Right.
Yeah.
I just don't know enough about that topic, but about the soundbar quality, like I don't actually know if like you cop a soundbar with a subwoofer and then like some speakers around the room, if that competes with like the old school tech with the big ass speakers. Like I just don't know. I wonder if there's something to like the literal acoustics of a box or something that changes the amplification, because like there's physics involved in this shit too, right? Anyway, I think we went off on a huge tangent there.
And then I asked, is there a single other form of entertainment or culture in which the quality of the medium has declined? So let's look at TVs. Well, TVs have gotten bigger and better all the time.
Yes.
Movies, they've got the surround sound now, and movies are so much better. Video games, I remember like Pong.
Video games are hard. They got way better. Video games in the old, because I grew up on a NES, bro. I've been gaming since I'm 3 on some Tetris shit, like video games got good. Like, do you remember those Super Nintendo Star Wars games? And then you got to the 64 with the fucking 3D Star Wars shit.
So like I had a Super Nintendo, but then I skipped 64. I had to go to the neighbors to play the 64. And then I jumped, if I'm not mistaken, I jumped right to PlayStation 1. Well, my dad got a PlayStation 1, and then that was...
Well, PS1 and 64 is the same cycle, right? So they were like competitors, because back then Xbox hadn't really fully dropped yet. Like Xbox comes in the middle of that cycle. Anyhow.
Yeah. I missed out on the first Xbox. It was 360 that I was like, I wanted the 360 solely because I played Gears of War at my homie's place.
Good times.
Yeah. And then you discover Halo.
Game,
Sorry.
Every other technology has improved the user experience except one, which is music. Well, people wonder why are music sales so bad? Why aren't people listening to this new band? If over a period of decades that we need innovation, and Supervynyl is one of them, but in general we need innovation coming from the record labels themselves that should spend money on art.
I mean, I know a lot of people choose to like listen to music on shitty headphones and like whatevers, but like, arguably, I haven't spent less than $150 on a pair of headphones in like 6 years, and like, it's never been so accessible to, from like a portability perspective, have excellent sound on the go. So while like the in-house speakers trash, like the headphones and earbud game is super not trash compared to like, I don't know, like the price points that used to exist. So anybody that wants to invest in having a better sound quality experience can probably do that on a very limited budget. Like, I've heard of people getting crazy sound on like $100 headphones, you know, like, anyway, just like an idea point. I know, maybe Lindell, maybe the headphones point is coming up. I don't know.
And they should create innovations that uplift the music and improve the user experience, not make it worse.
I think that this super vinyl idea is a great idea.
Why is it a great idea? Like, I'm not convinced that having more physical products is like going to fully enhance the experience of people's music listening and shit. Like, he hasn't convinced me that this super vinyl is gonna like save the day, to be honest. I don't even know if I like, now you have to buy a super vinyl player.
I think it's cool for people who want that. I think it's very niche, but given the way that a lot of us consume music, I don't know, man. Like, beating streaming right now is really hard. Like, it just seems very practical.
All I know is you can pack a lot of people into a festival with a crazy sound system right now. So it's like, you know, there are platforms and environments for that shit that still exist. Anyway.
Will anyone ever do anything about this?
First of all, whoever is CEO...
Do these guys go to raves? Do you think they go to raves, Chris? Do you think?
No, I don't. I think they may have gone in their younger years, but I don't think these guys currently go to raves. No,
I don't think so either. And Zamanel's point is excellent, because I can see how the chat box on this interview is a little butchered there, but music geeks are already buying turntables every 3 years, and there are 500 blogs and articles that come out saying there's a vinyl revival, but there's no revival. It never went away. Facts. In fact, yo, man, they go for like 50 a pop. So in a lot of ways, it's one of the best ways to like support your favorite artist is to cop the vinyl. And like pretty much everybody prints vinyls at like a certain tier of financing. Like, I was at this local event for end of the week for the Vices versus Memorial, and like his album had come out, and like they had just released the vinyl press at that event. So like, there is a vinyl industry. It's been there since I'm young. There have been vinyl purists in all the DJ worlds that I've been part of. Like, you know, like, it's weird sometimes to hear it, but then I asked the question of sound systems, like, does this man actually go? Does he go to things, or is he like a man that sits at home and consumes 800 albums in his morning? Like, and I'm not trying to talk shit. I really don't know the answer to that question, but
crazy you say that, because even like, does this man go out, or does he sit at home with 800 like albums?
Like,
right?
and I'm not.
Even if you're listening to like 800 albums, what if you're listening to them on like $1,000 speakers that give you a better fucking experience? And then if you're listening to them like on $20 speakers that give you the grittier
that's kind of his bigger point with that. I would say he's saying there should be R&D so that for like, you know, $20 you can get the most pristine sound. And I'm like, hold on, for like $150 I can get pretty stellar sound. Or you have environments like the club and live and shit where like you can, I mean, live is debatable, but there are club environments with great sound and a lot of other things and like ways to accomplish this goal. So like, I'm not fully sold that this dude goes to raves, is I guess what I'm trying to say, because I'm like, yo, raves are hard. They do so much to make it such a enthralling musical experience where they don't even need words. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they build stages and have flashy lights and we jump around for an hour.
No, but like, they have a whole vibe and the sound systems are fucking proper, and like they invest in making sure that shit's there, and the venues tend to be nicer for that, and like, at least the ones I've been to. Anyway,
Apple or Google, I tell you, they control our music culture, but they're not making decisions on the basis of the music.
Yeah,
music for them is a lost leader. Apple would give away the music for free if they could sell more of these.
That's right.
Google would give away music for free to sell more advertising on YouTube.
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody has got some priority higher than the music. And so then I say, well, we need something exciting so people will listen to it on more than just a phone.
What was the priority of record executives back in the day? Was it not money? Was it different? Wasn't that what people complained about? Like, I remember growing up listening to people satirizing these people and how they were all just greedy money whores or something. I don't know. Maybe I just don't fully understand it.
How do you convince people to do this? Because people will say, well, everyone's perfectly happy with what they've got. Well, people are always happy with what they've got. And I remember Steve Jobs when he said why he did the iPhone. He says people won't know what they want until we show it to them.
Right.
They're not until we show. I didn't realize that I needed an iPhone back in year 2000. You know, many of these innovations until you see them.
That's
just like switch iPhone for whatever else. Like that to me, that's just.
Okay, but his point is saying that people don't know they need the Supervynyl yet because they ain't heard the Supervynyl. That's what he's trying to get to. Using the iPhone as an example, like, because if you remember, there's that like famous quote from like the CEO of Microsoft at the time, kind of mocking the iPhone, and then he's like, literally a giant joke in the world of software. Like he's a punching bag for history now.
Like I guess where I'm kind of looking at it is like this Supervynyl, like. Maybe the iPhone was maybe to me like a bad example because it's like, well, the iPhone gave us like a screen phone. It was touch screen. It was like a new innovation.
That's what he's trying to imply is that there is no new innovations right now. That he's desiring that somebody like a music label or whoever it is, instead of letting the status quo be for the sake of sound quality, invests in this new sound technology. Because let's be real, since like the innovation of MP3s and waves and shit in like, I think that was the 80s, there hasn't exactly been these like crazy revolutions in sound technology to like enhance our listening experience to the next level outside of maybe access to simpler text. So in his example, this Supervynyl, in theory, to the music consumer, would be on par with the big reveal of the iPhone, and it's changing if it gets developed correctly to give people more of a great listening experience, is my understanding of his example with the iPhone. So it's pretty apt given this theoretical he's trying to push for.
They have a new Apple Studio computer that came out that they put an SD card reader in the front of it for people that are people like me. Now they made a monitor that's awful, that has the worst camera in it imaginable. I don't know how they could have screwed this up, but at least they have ports on them. They're new, and this isn't an ad for Apple, but their new laptops. Not, I don't have one here, but they put the SD card readers in. They put USB, regular USB ports back in them. They're making them thicker again, instead of like, let's make them thinner and thinner and thinner and take everything away, and you only have the USB-C ports or the light, whatever they're Thunderbolt ports. So I don't know why there was this change, but it's a good change.
Turns out, as we now know, it is related to a bunch of EU court cases of standardizing ports in Europe. Fun facts.
That's rare. It's rare when you see a company actually backtrack and add features that they had removed. So maybe they'll put the headphone jack back in the phone.
Maybe. And I actually am an Apple loyalist. I think Apple does high quality. They're innovative, particularly under Steve Jobs. They're just, I admire what they've done in many ways. My concern is more with a music culture in which the people who are making the decisions don't have their interests aligned with the other people in the music ecosystem. And let me make a comparison. Back in the old days.
Yep.
Oh, back in the old days, guys. I sound like a fogey.
Bro, come on. You be literally talking about the old days and how you like wrote for the old days and stuff. Now it's hitting you? Anyway.
But there was a distribution channel.
Yeah.
Musician would make a record. Record label would release it. He would go to these music distributors. I used to work with these people. They're like mafia, but they would distribute the record.
Literally the mafia.
Literally, they were. They would get the music into the record store, and then someone would come in and buy it.
Yeah.
Everybody in that value chain benefited if people loved music more.
Right.
the more you loved music, everybody in that value chain made more money and did better. So they were strongly incentivized to get people as excited about music as possible. Now let's compare the current day. What does Spotify want? What does Apple Music want? Well, first of all, Spotify, I am told, and once again, I got to be very careful because I don't know. I'm told that if you work at Spotify and you say we're a music company, the boss yells at you. Oh, we sell subscriptions. We don't sell. We're not a music company. We are a subscription. Now I don't know if that's true. But that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
But first of all, it tells
seems like it.
First of all, it tells you they don't view themselves in the same boat as the rest of us in the music economy.
Right.
And secondly, you ask yourself, who is the most profitable customer for Spotify? Well, it's obviously the person who pays the subscription and listens to almost no music.
Right.
So the more passionate you are about music, the less money Spotify.
So basically, every time a song gets streamed on Spotify, and he may explain this in a quick second, but Chris said what? So here we are. They pay a royalty to the labels. So that's how we get paid, Chris. That's how we get paid with the run-it-ups. So when people be doing the run-it-ups and people be really passionate about music like that, I mean, I actually bragged about how we can make more off of the 2 accounts I pay for on the $15 a month than it costs me on the $15 a month. Like, it's actually how the math works out with the right song, especially if you're playing with that 2-minute song range. Like, the fact that more musicians don't do this on some ego shit is ego. That's it. Because, like, I fucking paid for my DistroKid for the year this year doing this run-it-up shit with the peeps. So shout out to the 10 of y'all that are with me on this journey. But, yeah, it costs money if you be running that up and you be a passionate music fan that be constantly listening to music and shit. Like, it costs more money than, say, you're a person that you listen to Spotify and all you do is you pay your $15 a month and then you bump, like, an hour's worth of music a week, and that's it. We both pay the same $15 a month, but the payout on my account is stupid and the payout on their account is nothing.
For what they do. But I still think we would be better in our musical culture if music was run by even those mafia people at the record distributors. I hated dealing with those people. Even they, at least
we're both Italian, too.
That's right. Well, I know. I know. My family's from Sicily. But at least we were better off because even though I hated those people, we were in the same boat.
Right.
They wanted to sell a lot of albums.
That's right.
I wanted to sell a lot of albums. We wanted people to love the music.
That's
and
right.
It would be better if we had a business model for the distribution of music.
I think that's the most interesting thing I heard so far in this interview is the part where he's right. The people in charge do not give a fuck about music like that. Like, weirdly, Steve Jobs did care about music like that, but, like, most motherfuckers really don't. They don't make profit off of our passion for music, and that's fascinating as fuck. I haven't thought a lot about it, so I don't have a lot of opinions, but it is something that's prevalent in how little passion is showing for the local scene. Like, dead ass, one of the cheapest things you can do to impress a girl, and it might not be a rap show, but bring her to a jazz show and, like, come on, for like $10 you're gonna like look like a fucking cool ass motherfucker. And instead we don't really jump there so often, especially when we live in cities like that. And so our little local music scene struggle a little bit, but maybe there could be done like a shift towards focusing on live. That's where I really think the passion comes from, is like there's a disassociation between live music and the music that you're hearing. Like, I don't know if I really like some of my peers' music, but I've heard it live so many times that I fucking look forward to it every time. And I'm singing along in the crowds and I'm turning up to it. But would I have ever put the shit on ahead of time? Probably not. But the live changed so much. And I don't think they've talked a lot about live shows yet. They're still 20 minutes.
That seems to be slowly moving away from a musical culture, because the model now is what I call more of a mathematical model. Mm-hmm. The idea is every note you hit dead center in the middle of the tone.
Yep.
Perfectly in tune. Who can complain?
I call it the gridification of music.
Ted, who can complain? It's perfectly in tune. And everything's in the dead center of the beat. And in many ways, what we're doing is we've forgotten the lessons of the last 100 years. Because, you know what?
Yeah, he's making an interesting point here. So I'll as much as I might be critical, when Mans is speaking some interesting facts, this way pointing it out. So something to like, something to like notice is like rock music has changed drastically, and one of the main things that happen is with drumming. You'll often hear how people like prefer older drumming, and it's because back in the day, drums, you couldn't like do the whole copy paste shit. Like back in the day, mixing and mastering is like a process of literally cutting tapes and like reattaching tapes and shit. Like it's a very physical thing, right? And then you get to this Pro Tools era where now an engineer will go through a drum pattern and find like the perfect kick, and every kick that's off that isn't just perfect, they'll like literally copy and paste it so that when you get to the process of mastering, you get that brick wall of mastering, which is a result of something called the loudness wars, which y'all can Google pretty easily on YouTube and get a lot of reference points to. So in this effort to push the volume of music, a lot of perfecting crept in, because like low-key, a lot of them older, more dynamic records back in the day, dynamic's the word a lot of the rock people use, they're quieter, because you get this like deeper range of sounds and shit, and there's like less compressions and all that other shit that gets done to like flatten out the fucking wave. So I'll have to say it's an interesting point, because engineering has had this crazy impact on that type of shit, and I haven't really thought about the blues impact like that before, but good point, Mr. Ted.
I've studied musical innovation. This is one of my specialties, is how does musical innovation take place? What situations do you need for new sounds to emerge? And my fundamental belief is that the most significant innovation in music in the 20th century was the mixture of the African sensibility and the Western sensibility in the blues. Mm-hmm. Now, why do I say that? Why do I say that's so important? Because people say, well, blues is a tiny genre. What is it? 1/2% of why? How can you say that blues are so important? I said, you got to realize that for 2,500 years up to that point, we followed a model which I call the Pythagorean model. It's from Pythagoras. If you did geometry, and I hate to remind people of their high school geometry, but they might...
Y'all know how much I love Pythagoras on some no bullshit. Motherfuckers constantly hating on Pythagoras, but the Pythagorean theorem is the motherfucker that teach you algebra, and you use algebra every day of your life when you do any kind of calculations about time.
Classical music concert, the first thing you do is hear them tune up. Right. Everything must be in tune. Every note is precisely hit where it's supposed to be. But what people don't realize is that didn't happen outside the Western world. If you were in Africa, people didn't worry about hitting the note dead center.
Right.
You know, they would bend the note. Everything was free and liberated there. You didn't hit in the middle of the beat. The first Western...
Bro, I think the man's just broke down with science and Pythagoras why the Western world ain't got no rhythm.
Musical...
No? I mean, that's kind of what he's saying.
Collegists who tried to notate African music, they couldn't do it. And then all the computerized music tools, it was so much easier to go back. I mean, conceivably, software can do all those things. It can bend notes, but the easiest thing for software to do is that precision.
That's right.
And so I fear that we've lost something. It took us 100 years to break out of this Pythagorean paradigm, I call it. It took us 100 years to break out of that paradigm, and I'm worried that we have lost that, and we need something new to shake us up so everything isn't just driven by mathematics.
So you talked about the first time.
Like, high key, he's making big facts here. Like, as a person who shops for beats, I haven't done it in a hot minute. I still have a backlog. But who used to shop for beats, I remember noticing really fast around 2013-14 that pretty much everything you found online was 4-bar intro, 8-bar hook, 16-bar verse, 8-bar this, 16, 8. And it was like no deviations. It was all math driven, and motherfuckers just like copping this shit. And like so much of the music I would encounter in terms of like the instrumentals available to me were just math, bro. I guess you could call it like a type beat mentality in a sense. And like, I don't know, I don't feel like math is always the fully best. Like, you need to know the math and then know how to break the rules. It's all about breaking rules and fucking up and style and shit to me. But like, I feel like the algorithmic push on music like this kind of like takes away from people experimenting as much, and volume matters a lot more, and people just mass producing this shit because of math. And he might have some points here, because I've seen how a lot of shit can play out. Like, I don't know, back in the day you had to have almost like a whole ass project management team. Like, can you imagine being the production team physically cutting the reels together for Paul's Boutique, the Beastie Boys album, and how much thought would have to go into every specific reel? Because you can't be like going back and fixing the shit. It's got to be mad meticulously done ahead of time. So like, we don't have to sit there and like plan in the same way to create great sounds. We can just try shit. And so like, I don't know, it's a different world. But yeah, breaking the rules is lit. You can do a lot when you break the rules.
Around the year 1600 again, and maybe a little bit before, you had the birth of music publishing, where finally you could publish your music in a book and sell it. But I've studied this, and it was interesting. Most of the first music books that were published only sold about 500 copies, or the print runs were 500 or 1,000. And often the composer had to subsidize it. So it was like today. You know,
right, going, no difference.
I've been there, done that, you know. But finally, at some point during the 19th century, this changed. Oh, Susanna by Stephen Foster sold a bunch of copies, although people immediately tried to pirate it. The Maple Leaf Rag allegedly sold 1 million copies, which seems impossible, because I can't imagine there were 1 million people that could play that piece.
That's right.
And I played that piece on the piano. That's a technically, but at least they bought the sheet music. That's the beauty. That's the beauty when you turn into a physical product and sharing your music with millions of people. So I do believe we need. That's why I'm such a big thing on this Supervynyl or anything that gives a musician a chance to sell something more than a T-shirt at the gig.
Right.
I'm completely in favor of it. And not just, okay, obviously I'm pro-musician, but I also think this is for the fan, too.
Absolutely.
I don't think that the musicians and the fans have adversarial relationships. I really believe if I get the fan excited by my music, we both benefit in that. So yes, the sheet music was a forerunner of this, but we need something like that now for the digital age. And there are things out there, but I still don't think we found the final solution.
I'm gonna go argue one counterpoint to this next solution for something that engages audiences more. I think it's something the young people really tapped into, where I've anecdotally experienced the success of it a bit, and that's the behind-the-scenes process being a lot more exposed. I mean, everybody knows documentaries about the behind-the-scenes of classic albums do really well. Like Jay-Z did one, Metallica did one. People are really interested in this shit. So when you watch people produce content that kind of showcases how they create songs or creates this different platform or relationship shit, it does create more excitement because it gets more people invested in your creation process and shows, I guess, a bit more the authenticity of it. I think people do have this inherent assumption that like there's so much polish and shit that gets done and there's like 17 songwriters, because they're not talking about that shit. How about the fact that like we be constantly talking about the number of songwriters on a song and the authenticity of the art versus the way the industry runs and stuff. So like it's interesting how like when you write and record and produce your music live in front of an audience, it creates a completely different relationship to people who feel inclined. Like, as an example, Zalman, I was here just watching it. That dude helped me rewrite a whole bunch of French one time. My shit would have been shittier if I had been doing that in private, you know? Like, I know that because I streamed live my recording process of music, I was given free instrumentals. I was given free mixing. I had way more people want to book me, way more people take interest in me. And all I had to do is fuck up incessantly on the internet a bunch, because it was awkward as fuck. I'm going to probably do it again soon, but it was super awkward failing at verses over and over again. But
there's a sense of relatability in that, though. Like, people, I think, like, we're so used to seeing a bunch of finished products, polished stuff, and, like, the final versions that there is this, like, need or want for, like, authentic failure and growth.
I'm not convinced that having a Supervynyl's really going to solve the problem, to be honest. I don't think the issue is better sound quality. I think people have a different desire for parasocial relationships. Like, you want to feel connected to your creators. And that's a giant part of the modern musical landscape. It's something that I firmly believe in, is you kind of have to be more than a musician in this era. Although back in the day, like, look at like the bassist from Fall Out Boy was in One Tree Hill. Like, Eminem did 8 Mile. Like, half your favorite rappers were in some movie or another back in the day. Like,
I mean, a lot of my favorite rappers do like a bunch of other things.
You run that shit back. The Beatles was doing movies. Like, people were always kind of doing more than music to stay interesting and relevant and explore art in all the ways. So it's like, I don't know. I think that most artists do have tools at their disposal. And like, I've not really done it. So in the next couple of weeks, I'm putting myself into the challenge of really creating the real social media strategy and really pushing this angle of exposing my music using the tools that are available to me to create more interest. Like, how hard is it to pull up Reaper, play a bit, and sit there and talk about my lyrics on an Instagram thing, or to like put, stream the recording process, or these different things we can all choose to engage in that create more interest and excitement for the users. And what I've seen anecdotally is the people in my scene that play with social media like that have a much bigger following than the people who don't. To the same degree that the people who go to live shows a lot and perform a lot are able to organically get together with a following. So like, the guy who goes to the jam night and freestyles with the band 52 weeks a year has a bigger fan base than the guy who does not do that kind of shit. So like, there's just all these ways to, kind of get your buzz up in a sense and leverage tools, but understanding that people are looking for a deeper connection with the art that they're going to. Like, part of why we do okay is the level of exposing of our lives and shit that we put online, and how much of it is just like, nah, you can tell we trash at a lot of this shit. Like, there's nobody behind us. This is us doing this. You're here for that authentic shit. And
that's what it is. I think the authenticness of a lot of it, like, I was having a conversation at Belmont recently with, I think, Legends and Blocka, and they were explaining how, like, a lot of like the social media pushes and shit, we've kind of, they feel, I'm not speaking for anybody, but the conversation was about like how we're moving away from final products, and like people kind of enjoy watching you buy the bottles, like actually purchase it. And I got stumped on that, because I was like, it makes it more relatable if I can see you paying money or actually using your card to buy the bottle, instead of just seeing the bottle and not like having any relatability.
Especially
to how you
in like a world where everybody's like, nah, I know you rented all that, but I wonder how much of that plays into it. I don't know, because like, I'm just not convinced that sound quality is the giant thingy. I think what he was saying about the sales pipeline, that is some realness. Anyway.
I have all sorts of crazy ideas. I have this article called Strange Predictions About NFTs. I actually think we could have a situation in which you sell your music to a fan, and they actually end up with an ownership stake in it, so that if they can get more fans for you, they make money, and it's all going through a blockchain, and you don't need to trust your manager or the record label anymore.
Right.
And ways to create financial incentives so that both the fan and the musician both benefit financially from the success of the song. It's not happening now. I believe within 5 years it will be, and those kind of relationships could be true.
I think that's a cool idea in theory.
But it only works for fucking people with fan bases.
But that's what it is. Like, I think as a theory, when it's like, why am I going to like do this all myself when I can get my fans who are going to like speak on my behalf and try to get their people to whatever. So I understand that portion, but it's like you said, it only works if you have a fan base. It only works.
No, but let's actually go. Okay, fine. Maybe not. Maybe if I like be like, okay, who want to own a stake and lose weight? I could find somebody that might believe in the song enough to like purchase a stake in it. But like, let's look at it at a different point. So now your entire audience is based on crowdfunding, which is where like you can look at YouTube and Twitch as models of what artists whose entire thing is on, crowdfunding is like, and it ends up being a lot of clickbaity shit, or you know, you have to kind of appeal to your audience. Like, you watch people on Twitch, right? So the live musician folk have to do a bunch of cover songs, or they have to do the looping shit where they interact with the audience, or they have to freestyle to the chat. And unless you're doing the pre-subscribed, approved audience things, you are not going to get the fiscals in this platform to do it. So when you rely that much on it in the way that the NFT would world, it would be a bunch of rich fucks owning your fucking creative direction at the end of the day, because you're now relying entirely on that funding source. Like, who's buying NFTs, yo? Like, it ain't poor people like that.
So yeah, that's a whole other like conversation, and what, like, just spending time in the virtual world with some of the crypto guys and like those people that I know, not that they're like serious people, but just they know more about this than I do. It always the same conclusion to me comes. It's like, if there's nothing tangible to an NFT, I don't see the value of it. Because just like we've seen with other NFT scams, it's like, if I'm the artist and I do the NFT thing with my music and I send it to a fan and then my fan runs it up and gets me a bunch of stuff, what stops me from just pulling it out? Like, I'm the original
Well,
creator of the song and
let's,
I can just like
I
I'm not
mean,
saying
that
condoning
can
it, but it's
happen,
like,
and I think that type of shit breaks trust in it, but let's act under the assumption that everyone's behaving honorably. Now you have to have enough people who can afford it / have interest in purchasing this NFT when they can just play your shit on YouTube.
or any other distribution. I think that's where I've always come back to. It's like, what more value, and this is just NFT specific, it's like, what more value can you bring that allows it to be worth it?
So NFTs are interesting points on a lot of this metaverse shit, VR, all of it. Y'all gotta know, I've been mad passionate about VR since pre-COVID. Like, I caught my Oculus December 2019. You know, like,
Like,
the problem with it is that the technology is mad dope, and a lot of the shit on paper is real good. But when you look at technological cycles, there's an early adoption phase, and in that point, the only people who really give a shit about it are the people that are mad interested in it. So arguably, when it comes to this, like, you know, world, maybe we're a little bit more on the early adopter side of it. In order to break into mass appeal, this technology, and mass appeal is when, like, the people you work with at work that you think have trash tastes, they give a shit about it. When you get to that point is when it's commercially viable. And in order to achieve commercial viability, and a lot of technologies have died simply because they could never break to the commercial viability point, there has to be a usefulness to it that makes an average person want to change their fucking life for that shit. Because that's what you're asking with an NFT or a conversion to a virtual reality, is people to change their life. The best use I can give you for virtual reality is working out. I cannot give you a better use for it. I suppose going to concerts virtually is cool if it's your vibe. God damn, did I never do it, because I live in Montreal, so I'm like, I'm going to go to the real life shit where I can sweat with people. But working out's lit in VR, but it's super hard.
There's different aspects. Like, I would say that having
great
the
point,
freestyle sessions,
Crocs, sorry.
The freestyle sessions I was a part of with Sessions, I feel like there is a benefit if you're very passionate about like wanting to do that, and it just gives you a spot that you don't have to like go outside and like deal with whatever weather conditions or just deal with people. You can go into the virtual world and do that.
Here's the thing, bro. Like, now with the current headset, now with the current tech, like, you're good for like an hour and a half, and then like, yeah, there are people who really do love it, but like,
I'm not saying like go 4 hours. Like, trust. Like, sometimes
like, maybe the next Rift will be lit, or the next Quest is coming soon, and it looks like it's a smaller, lighter headset, so maybe it'll be more like usable and shit. But like, we haven't reached a point yet where the experience is better than like, let's say gaming. The gaming in VR is not as good as playing on a 4K monitor.
I agree with that. I guess I'm giving more light to like. So I did a lot of the open mics, right? And I would say that a lot of the open mics allowed me to get comfortable performing my music in front of people, whether they are avatars or not. It was a way for me to be able to use that, like, to get comfortable, and then I can go perform in front of people. So I think
But
it's like
you
there
have
is.
gear already, right?
I mean, I've got a computer.
So let's talk another situation. You don't have the
Yeah.
mic, the sound card. I know you have the gear. You have
Yeah,
gear
yeah, yeah, yeah.
already to make yourself sound all kind of nice and shit. So you're kind of looking pretty in the sound world. And you're like already comfortable recording music and shit. Let's say you're not necessarily where you're at with the gear and everything. You still have the option of going to a fucking open mic and signing your name on a piece of paper and rapping week over week over week over week.
Yeah,
In most places. Not every
yeah.
place in the world, totally understood, but in most urban populations, you're going to have an open mic you can hit up. So it's
Right.
like, now you're talking about how do you beat that? So the shit has to be so good it beats that. Or like, and you can pick it. Like, my mom tried going to a hockey game in VR. She'd rather watch it on her TV. You know, it's like, it has to beat what's already available to the average person in
Yeah.
order for it
Yeah.
to hit mass adoption. That's where, like, I think NFTs are like a long time away. The core technology's fire. And in 2032, when we figured out what the fuck to do with that shit, it'll be like, yeah, NFT 4.0 is the hardest shit ever. But like, honestly, with all the scams and shit, I really like the point that Corks made where like somebody starts one up on your name and something bad happens, you're the one that gets fucked holding the bag. You're done. You're toasted. Off of some CoffeeZilla makes a hit piece on you shit. Anyway, let's get back to this.
Truly transformative.
So the Web3 applications, NFTs and things like that, could be concert tickets, could be fan club access. So you think
You don't need an NFT for that, right? Like, you just don't need an NFT. You can just sign a contract and it's the same exact fucking thing.
within 5 years that people, because it takes a long time for people to adopt things, right?
Yeah.
Even like a debit card. You know, people used to use cash all the time. Now people went to debit cards, and people rarely.
Bro, I'm not a cell phone debit card guy. I watch people use their cell phone debit cards and shit, and I'm like, I'm not there yet. I'm not comfy with that shit. But I know it's the future, and I know that one day there will just no longer be physical debit cards, and it will be like your smartwatch is your debit card.
Use cash. I can't remember the last time I. No. Yeah, people are like, oh, you're paying in cash? What? No. It's an odd thing. And
there's like one product in my life I habitually need cash for, and it's just one product, and pretty much everything else is on the card at this point, though.
I mean, unless you're paying for venues at the door.
That's true. Music has introduced like, yo, you pay. There's a bit more under the table shit in music, like paying your DJ and shit. That is fair, but that's a big fact on NFTs. Well, there'd be more security in it if there was more of an adoption point, because there'd be more people invested in creating those ecosystems. To me, cash is just going virtual. It's just gonna be, because the problem with like a crypto universe is all the regulatory points. All the access points is mad regulated, right? So like, it's still regulated. Like, if the access points is regulated, then it's regulated in your country. It's just the situation. So like, none of the promises of all that lived up. So I imagine for the next hot minute of the foreseeable future, it's fiat currencies moving towards digital fiat currencies managed by it is yes, that's exactly what it is, Linda. But yeah, I see it being like that, just virtual currencies managed entirely by algorithms and shit, instead of like actual humans. Well, humans will oversee the algorithms. That's how the stock market already works and shit. Anyway,
it needs to have an account, with cryptocurrency or something like that, and then they have to get used to having that, and they have to get used to buying this and buying that, and it takes adoption of these things takes years for people to feel comfortable that they understand what it is. And is that 5 years or is that 20 years? What do you think?
Well, there's an adoption curve, and I've actually studied this. I used to study with Everett Rogers, the guy who actually invented.
Sorry, go on, Chris.
I just think there's like, I'm repeating the gatekeeping conversation. It's like a lot of people don't formulate some of these new technologies or new ways, or even like express crypto in a way that like normal people understand. And I use normal people in terms of like not being invested in the crypto sphere and shit. So it's like
instead of normal people, I said mass adoption, but I think we're saying the same thing.
Right. All I'm saying, and maybe I'm just repeating what you said, is like, I think it would be easier for people to be more open to certain shit if we made it easier for them to get that information and not make it so cryptic. Like, even spending time within the fucking crypto thing, it was like the only time I really received it was somebody gave me, like, he gifted me like $3 in crypto or some shit like that, like $2-3. And we were like freestyle rapping, and he liked what I said, and then he gifted it to me. But to be able to receive that, dude, I still haven't received it. Like, I don't know how to.
Just
and
to
nobody
like,
knows how to transfer it over.
Nah, like, just like, to piggyback on that shit. So I downloaded Brave browser and I did the ad thing.
Yeah.
Religiously clicked. $126. I'm like, cool. But a young, ignorant me didn't know nothing. Next thing you know, I transfer this shit out into a wallet, and I find out it'll cost me $150 to take out $120. And I was like, oh, that's super trash. Those are things that'll stop me from giving a fuck about this.
Are you still using Pi?
Oh shit, no, I forgot about Pi.
Bro, they now have changed some shit because they're like trying to get their network to really go public, and like, I'm paraphrasing a bunch because I'm not super well informed. But essentially, like,
we should do a podcast on Pi.
We had to homeboy was telling me like, yo, we had to like put a certain amount of our Pi, or like do a thing where we had to like lock it in for almost like 3 years.
I did that,
and
yes.
So I've locked in an amount for like 3 years that I can't touch.
Which is fine.
Once that has been leveled up, right, and like invested into, when I want to switch it over to my bank, I then have to invest another like $5 of my own cash to unlock like the ability to get my crypto.
I mean, that will then be like a few years. I mean, to be fair, bro, it's Pi.
I get it.
But just to the point of people scamming, like, people have been scamming. Like, one of the practices that used to be prevalent in the software industry is like an additional checkbox that says, you know, like this insurance that they would sell, and, you know, like, it isn't exactly kosher. There was no additional thing. It was just an extra $8, and we're talking people like Dell and like major corporations would sell this shit because like your basic legal protections in Canada at least give you like a year warranty of the law says so go fuck yourself. And Kickstarters is full of trash, but it's also full of gems, to be fair. And then like Patreon's full of trash. Like, I think it's just kind of like, even the music industry, to double back on that, like, people act like in the glory days of every particular industry that they love, that there wasn't like 100 trash bands you never heard of, but they weren't able to get recorded, so you just never heard them. You didn't hear all the other guys freestyling on the block that never got invited to the stew. You know, like, a lot of things like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of danger in it, but I feel like cash is here to stay, though, because I don't see a way around it. The world is changing, and the gold standard versus the U.S. standard and things like that may shift. I don't know if the U.S. remains the global standard on some other shit, but that's not as related. So we'll get back in because we're very close to the end.
I think that once more tools are developed for people to just even things like setting up a crypto account, you know, these things are it's esoteric to the average person.
It's esoteric to not the average person. It's fucking time consuming to learn all that shit, and it's annoying.
They don't even know. They hear these terms, and it's just like anything. You hear terms for a long time, and then you don't know what they are. Then all of a sudden, 2 years later, it's like you've known it your whole life. Just like the iPhone took off, you know, or the internet took off. You know, what is this internet thing? If somebody told me, Rick, you're going to be making video essays or whatever these are, short form or music appreciation videos, this is going to be the end of your career is going to be that. It's not going to be teaching. It's not going to be music production. That's what you're going to do. I never would have believed that.
Well,
right?
It's the same for me. You know, I write on Substack now. 18 months ago, I didn't even know what Substack was.
Right.
But then when I saw
See breakfast cereals 18 months ago, he didn't know what it was.
The business model, we're going to pay you 90%. You control all the intellectual property. You control the email. I'm jumping on this ship before it sails. And so who knows what the next 5-10 years are. If you had to go through enormous hoops to get onto YouTube, you're not going to do it. They have to make it easy for you. Right. They made it easy for me to get onto Substack. These new innovations in music, if they make it easy for the musician to do it and there's money to be had, the world will change rapidly.
Well, musicians have had to adapt. There's no question about that since the advent of home recording gear through digital audio workstations, and they've done it. They've learned how to produce their own records at home on laptops. They've learned how to put their music out there on platforms, whether it's Bandcamp or SoundCloud, or getting it on Spotify or getting it on Apple Music. And these are things that, once again, unimaginable 25 years ago, 30 years ago when I started in the music business, that I think is a great thing. I think it's great that musicians have had to figure out these new skills, just like I've had to figure out how to make videos. I never even owned a camera before I started my YouTube channel.
Facts. That's what you got to do. Evolve with the times. None of that conversation audios that he had incorporated even any kind of how do you mix audio with visual elements to enhance the experience, right? This dude, like Ted, it was purely audio focused without any real enhancements to the media, But even since time, music before it was recorded was a live thing, so there would have been this visual component to it. So you would go to a venue of sorts and there would be the band that was there playing the shits, and so there was always these extra components beyond just the record, the record isn't even, that's like a late game addition to the core of music history and shit.
Now iPhones are good enough, or any kind of phones are good enough that you can pretty much make any content on those. And
you can make a movie on your phone.
You can make a movie on your phone. So these are really positive developments. I wanted to ask you about one more thing, Ted. So I want to ask you about Bach. Okay.
Bach.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that question.
Okay. I want to ask you about Bach. Are there musicians like Bach that still exist, or are there singular musicians that have lived over time that are just so unique?
Well, Bach is an interesting question, and I end up spending a lot of time thinking and talking about Bach, and it's mostly my son. I've got my youngest son, Thomas, is passionately devoted to Bach. Mm-hmm. And during COVID, he was studying philosophy at Harvard, and they sent him home because you have to go home. And I think I'm spending a lot of money for this tuition, and he's going to be home. Right. And he came home and he said, "Dad, I'm going to use the pandemic productively. I'm going to play Bach an hour or two every day." Mm-hmm. And literally, that's pretty much the only composer he plays.
Right.
He's just Goldberg variations, well-tempered clavier, French suites. And at dinner, he wants to talk about Bach. This isn't, so we have these long discussions. Who's the best pianist for Bach? Well, and which cantatas are the best? So I'm always talking to him about Bach because and I love Bach too.
I don't know that I've really had that many casual conversations about classical music with random people in my life. I'll throw it out there. I know that they exist, but it's just not. It's not a thing. However, good use of time, I guess.
I love Bach too, but there's one of the questions I asked. I think I even asked this on Twitter recently. Is Bach composed fugues? Who's the greatest fugue composer alive today? And it's like, there is none.
Right.
And that's a slight exaggeration, but there's nobody can do that stuff.
Right.
There is nobody.
Right.
Who can do some of that counterpoint, and I think it's because Bach.
Well, now I want to listen to Bach. I don't know what he's talking about. Do you know, Chris? Should we do a Bach review? We're going to do a Bach review, Chris.
I'd do it. I'll do it.
Conceive music different than you and I. You and I think in terms of chords, rhythm, melody. Bach is thinking in terms of multiple melodic lines happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
and he just conceived of
multi-dimensional.
Breakfast cereals is on the fuck board. You should use that positive pickle to say it's dope.
That's right. He conceived of music in a way that people don't now. And even in his day, and sometimes people say, well, Bach is another dead white male. Blah, blah. I said, well, tell me the person that I haven't heard of that composed fugues as well as Bach.
Right.
Who is that person?
Right.
And I said, I'll save you some time because I have looked into this. That person does not exist.
Well, it's also like, how many deaf composers are there?
Well, no. I mean, it's like Beethoven, and so let me counter and soften what I just said.
Yes.
In my heart of hearts, I do believe music talent does not disappear from generation to generation.
Right. We were talking about this last
There
night.
is somebody out there as good as a Bach or a Beethoven, or if there isn't now, there will be in a few years or whatever. The problem now is not whether that music talent exists; it's whether we'll ever hear it.
Right.
And I'm going to give I'm going to tell you this. This is my crazy idea of what Ted would do if I ran a major record label. Mm-hmm. This is why they will never let me run a major record label. But this is what I would do. I would first try to find out what are the best music schools in the world. Give me 5 or 6. I don't know what they are. Juilliard, Berkeley. I don't know what they are. But I would have somebody research. They go, Ted, these are the best music schools. These are the 5 best music schools in the world. So I would go to each one, and I would spend several weeks, and I would go to all the professors, I'd go to the students, and I would go to everyone. I had the same question. Who are the most talented people here? You're a student. Who's the one student that you really just think is a genius? And I would do this at the 5 best musical. And for each one, I would identify the 5 best students. I have now 25 names on a list. And I'd call them together. So I said, I've been to the best music schools, and I'm told that you have the greatest musical talent of anybody in these schools. I'm giving each of you a check for $50,000. I want you to make an album. You can do any kind of album. You can have a rock band. You can play reggae. You can write fugues. You can do a movie soundtrack. You can do a country album. You can do an hour of silence. I don't care. But I am backing you because I've tried as well as I can to find the best of the best. And maybe I did the wrong method, but I tried to find the best of the best. And now I'm going to support you. Go do it. I think they would come up with at least some stuff that would blow our mind. I would do it every year. Every year I would have those 25 people. It would cost nothing.
Right.
25 people, 50,000.
Yeah, I wonder if something like that exists. I don't know. If y'all watching this in the future, does something like that actually exist? Because that sounds hard. I would love to do that if I was rich.
And you and I both know that, okay, maybe some of them would do bizarre stuff. Maybe some people would do non-commercial stuff. But
somebody's going to come up with something.
We'll get to that. We'll let this interview play out for the last minute, I realized.
He's going to blow our mind because we've tried. At least we tried to find the best, and at an early stage in their vocation, back them.
Yeah.
And let them run with it. So I believe there is a Bach and a Beethoven out there. What we need to do is, as the people who are stewards of the industry, and you and I have influence, not as much influence as we would like, but we have at least we have the ability to.
Remember when I made that point before about how he wants better gatekeepers?
To express our opinions. And they would never let me run a record label or do this. But this is what I would do because this is the only way we're going to find that next Bach or Beethoven. Because that person is out there. Let's discover them.
That person's on TikTok.
I love it. Ted?
Yeah, okay, we're good. The last 10 seconds is going to be a plug. That's an interesting point on the schools thing, too, because, most of, take the character of Bad News Brown and Montreal hip-hop. Arguably, this guy was, he was on a path to be, the one. He was, that good with his harmonica. His understanding of music was next level, and he honed his craft busking and shit. There's plenty of ways to develop talent based off of live audiences. Again, they didn't really touch on that. I brought it up before, and Lindell was all they're going to talk about it in the future. But they didn't. They didn't talk about, because we make hip-hop, right? So I guess this is our last little bit at the end is to, comment a bit. And, so you take a 2-minute song, you go back to it. If you have a 10-minute slot on a fucking showcase, if that's all you're getting, and that's what the industry that's promoting you and building you up is providing for you, then naturally you're going to shift your writing and how you produce your music to better fit into this time slot that's available to you. Like, you know how many times I got booked for a 30-minute set in the last year? Twice, 3 times. And those were sets mostly I set up. Like, if I want to rap for more than fucking 15 minutes, I more or less have to promote the show myself, or it's not going to fucking happen. So if I don't have this live environment, without the personal financing to produce the show that lets me explore the creativity, then like, yo, it's just like, these are the hurdles that we're facing. We can make all the music we want, but when we're talking about putting shit on, it's like, you want to develop talent instead of finding these top school people. It would probably make more sense to take that money and fucking pay a venue to let us go perform. Just with that money, you could do so much for so many more people. It costs so little to throw shows on the local end of things at the scale of what a label would do, but the return on investment is so tiny that nobody cares about it. Like, we're talking about flips, so like, you put in $5 and make back 8. These are the flips, so nobody want to invest in that. But it's that tier of the scene where you can hone the craft and identify the people without the scholarly side. Because, yo, if you're going through fucking private schools to find your top musicians, yo, bro, that's colonialism's gonna fucking influence everything you're doing there. It's just a fact, because those are those institutions. But some of the best talent you're gonna find is probably hidden in like some fucking dive bar where they literally perform all the time, and you just don't know it because they're just in that fucking dive bar and you never go there. And there's all that kind of shit. I don't know. So I feel like not enough was talked about live performances for a conversation on a warning of the future of music, and it was too focused on a little bit the technology and all the valid criticisms of album sales. But like, yo, there's plenty of ways for artists to make money. Like, motherfuckers be selling all kinds of merch now, and like Patreons. They didn't even talk about Patreons one time. I made more off of Patreon than I did off of music. I promise you that much. So like, all I'm trying to say is like, there's so many other things that are in this conversation that were not really touched on in terms of being an insider looking out versus the outsider looking in, where I feel like the music reviewer, man, doesn't go to raves and parties and isn't in touch with 20-year-olds. He'd just be like, you know, watching it from the outside, which is super important. Everything this dude said was really interesting and worth listening to, but that was just my thoughts. What about you, Chrissy Poo?
I mean, I think it was interesting to see a perspective of like the different contents, how it affects us, you know, how we like are trying to change music for the future, how we listen to music, how we get it and everything. But a lot of it did kind of just sound like he has his own little point of view of how he wants shit to go, and it doesn't really correlate past what I feel is like a certain specific crowd. Like, I think there is many other conversations and many other like artists, like we've said throughout the show, like talk to artists like us who look at Spotify and like really enjoy how they like do some shit. Talk to artists who are like on the come up and like really trying to figure out ways to do their shit and all these other things, and then see how we can help collectively change the music industry. Not really looking, at least from what I understood, it's like a lot of the data is coming from already established points, already established record labels that have been doing this shit for years already. So it's like, who are you really talking to besides your own just theory and perspective? Is kind of how I took it. I think it's interesting and I think it's cool, but yeah.
Nah, I hear you. I don't know about that freedom point, though. Like, I think that rich people were more liberal and experimental in where they put their money. But I think there's a lot more freedom now. Like, bro, there were the 7 words and you can totally say a thing. And there were the 7 words you can't say on television, right? Like, there used to not be a platform where I could do this. Watch what I'm about to do. This is marijuana, in case anyone was wondering. And I'm not trying to be a cornball about it, but this is a monetized video. Y'all saw ads. I live in Canada. According to all the terms and conditions of YouTube and everything else, we can burn reefer. We can't promote or advocate drug use or things like that. There are limitations to it. But at a recreational point of view, we are allowed to smoke weed in the content the way a motherfucker can drink beers. There's way more freedoms now than I think people are aware of compared to what it used to be when monetization of content existed in the back in the days. So, like, I do question the idea of freedom.
I think the monetization of content is still available. If you hit a certain amount of streams, views, clicks, this and that, you'll get monetized. But there is a limit to like how far you'll go with your content, right?
Where do you work, Corks, where people are dying?
He works in like the health section of I don't know if it's for the military portion, or is he just transferred over to the health section?
Fair.
Me and Corksy talk off stream.
Fair. That's respects. I want to talk more with people. I have to do better at my Discord. I'm going to do better at Discord. I've left it open the whole last 2 days, which for me is a record. So I will be in the Discord improving it over the next week.
It's so crazy because I'm just on Discord all the time.
I haven't been doing my duties on Discord, and I've been sleeping on it. So for all y'all watching, Discord link in description in the future. Do I think freedom as of now can be questioned? I mean, are you saying that? About? Freedom is fucking always in flux, though, right? Like, where you live and what time you live, it changes. If you want a drastic example, look at China in like 2008 versus China today, and the level of freedom shifted drastically. People say the U.S. is the freest country. I mean, people who live in the U.S. say that the U.S. is the freest country. I would say
even people who live in the U.S. say that, like, the ideology is like, yeah, you got freedom and freedom.
I'd be like saying some Denmark or some shit would be like free. I'd be like Denmark, maybe. Y'all get sued for saying shit. What are you saying? Who says the U.S. is the...
Freedom is not free. Like, yes, you have the freedom to do and say what you want, but these things do have consequences in relation to what you're doing. So, like...
Especially in the land of suing motherfuckers.
Like... should you say this are two different things.
I mean, like, arguably, they're not as unfree as the UK where motherfuckers gotta censor their lyrics, but they live in a land where motherfuckers is going to jail over their lyrics, so I don't know. Freedom's a weird thing. Freedom is as relative as to the person in charge of your country in that given moment and the way that the social norms go. So, like, as an example, I lived in a place where we chose to give up all kinds of freedoms for the sake of a virus to a point of curfew for like 5 months. And we all just agreed this was lit. Let's do it. I mean, lit, big word, but we all did it. So, most of us. So, like, freedom is...
But agreed was more like if you went outside, you'd get ticketed. You'd get or at least run the risk of, because I know people have done it and nothing happened. So
I'm just saying, like, we agreed collectively to play ball enough that we did it. So, like, I didn't really fuck with the curfew. Other people did. Maybe I'm just not cool like that. I'm just trying to, like, say freedom is so relative to, like, you know, like, look at Ottawa in the middle of the trucker crisis. All of a sudden, Trudeau took away freedom temporarily and gave powers to people temporarily on a whim because he felt like he could. So freedom is just so relative a concept. What I can say with regards to music is people get mad, I think, that it's harder to make money off of direct financing from things like labels and things like to that effect. And to that end, yeah, you're probably not going to get great deals like you could in the 70s maybe. And like the entire economics of the situation isn't set up to create godlike fucking figures and suppressing everybody else. Like, there's a lot of weird shit that went into the music industry back in the day too that, like, is worth pointing out. Whereas now, more people, I think, than ever can pull their 100K a year and, like, dip out into obscurity and you would never know it. So the question is, like, is stardom the measure of it all? Is millions the measure of it all? Because I know tons of people who get bank off of music. I'm not there yet, but I'm on the way. So it's like when you understand that there's just so much money available in music. Like, he never talked about sync licensing. He never talked about so many things that are relevant for music actually sync licensing would impact music as much as TikTok. And you might not know that, but motherfuckers write sanitized ass music because of sync licensing more than other things, because there's a huge bag in that. So like, all I'm trying to say is there's a lot of parts of what he said that was not there. Anyway, what were you going to say, Chris?
Forgot. I think you answered it, but I completely like zoned the fuck out and forgot.
Fair. I'm not really sure what else to do with this video.
Oh,
I feel like
all I was gonna say is like, I think in terms of like having to work with labels and shit, I think we are coming to a point where things are shifting, where we may not need labels so much anymore, because we can make our own money through off streaming and distributions and shit like that we can do independently. Is it a harder grind? Arguably. Is it going to take longer? Arguably. Is there a big factor of luck involved in all of this? Yes. But like, I think we are coming to a point now where record labels may not be the wave anymore, just because if I can go make a stack or even racks or more than that, why do I need the label? Unless we're looking at like certain, I guess,
it's also
departments and shit
like,
that you may.
but it's even more than that. Like, there's a lot more people making smaller amounts of money in music and a lot less stars. I think that's a lot of what the situation is boiling to, where a lot of people can't like fathom that, like that there is this whole middle tier of shit that is just, a lot more people are content with that. Like, do you really want to deal with like the fame and a lot of the other things, having watched the last 15 years of the internet? And a lot of people choose that like not as famous route and just get their bags and do their thing. Anyhow, I think this is enough for today. We could maybe, Lindell, you get all kinds of control over what we talk about. We owe you a whole bunch still. So I guess in a couple of weeks, we'll have our next Lindell review recommendation thing as we catch up on what we owe Lindell through Patreon. So if you do fucks with what we do, we in dire need of financing at this point to increase the livelihoods of life and shit and do some nicer shit. We just have way more expenses these days. I just did my tax prep. But yeah, patreon.com/behindthatsuit if you want to show love. Over the next month, I'm going to redo all the tiers and kind of update it to a more relevant version of what we're doing these days, where we are up to a whole bunch. And the Discord's in the comments. All the stuff is in the comments, or the description of the video, so you can check all of that stuff out. We be doing music. I just got booked to open for Paul Wall, so if you happen to live in Montreal and want to buy tickets to see Paul Wall, holla at your boys. March 10th at Belmont. So gotta hustle that shit. If you want that pickle merch, the pro or the anti-pickle merch, holla at your boy. We got that on deck too. And yeah, this has been a fun time. Chris has a new song coming February 2nd. Link in description. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Much, and I apologize. I love the chat. I love everybody. I love all of you viewers out there watching this video after it's been edited officially. My name's Chris Chrome. I'm out.
And yo, as far as editing goes, you're either going to see all the interview stuff or none of it. It depends on copyright. Live long and prosper, everybody.
Bye.